the Hogwarts professor mixed into Marvel. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 251, Sacrifice Dormammu, Dragon Bone Seal. At night, in the underground space of the Boren building. At night in Hell's Kitchen, you can often hear some gunshots and shouting, which is the characteristic of Hell's Kitchen. But for some reason, tonight, near the Boren building, it seems particularly quiet. All the street lights on the side are off, leaving only darkness, which is even more weird. There is no light in the entire building. If it weren't for the moonlight reflecting through the glass of the building, from a distance, the entire building would be ignored. Unlike the darkness on the upper floors of the Boren building, his underground space is very bright. With the naked eye, a large number of black-clothed ninjas are scattered in all directions of the underground space, as if they are on guard against something. And in the deepest part of the underground space, the hand will be Five Fingers and the Black Sky Erica, together watching the black-robed man in front of them. Mr. Lawrence, welcome to the Hand and the Club, Mrs. Gayo said in a slightly hoarse voice. But you can still feel a hint of indifference in her tone. Lawrence obviously didn't care. After seeing the hand and the Five Fingers on the opposite side, a happy smile appeared on his face. However, when he saw Hikong, especially after feeling the other party's peak aura, a trace of fear flashed in his eyes. Then, he took off his hood and revealed his face. In the eyes of Mrs. Gayo, Murakami and others, Lawrence's forehead was covered with black lines, and there were black halos around his eyes, which exuded an evil and dark aura. However, the Five Fingers of the Hand and the Society were not surprised. On the contrary, they stood in a strange formation, with their auras connected, and also exuded a different dark aura, which was very similar to the black air next to them. After feeling the breath of the Five Fingers of the Hand and the Society and the black air, Lawrence's eyes flashed with caution. It has only been 2 days since we last met, and the opponent's strength has increased so much. I'm afraid that the opponent has sacrificed many sacrifices in the past 2 days. If I make a move at this moment, I'm afraid I will really be defeated. Thinking about it, Lawrence restrained all his auras and showed a friendly smile on his face. At the same time, the Five Fingers of the Hand and the Society also sensed it and restrained their own auras. However, the black hair on the side was like a tool man, still unchanged, releasing his aura, as if reminding the other party something. You are Madame Gayo, right? Lawrence said to the old woman in front of him. I have heard of your name for a long time. This time, I believe our cooperation will be very pleasant and unforgettable. After hearing this, Madame Gayo said indifferently, Sir Lawrence, I hope so. According to the contract, we have brought the sacrifice. As he spoke, the Botu beside him clapped his hands lightly. Boom. The applause seemed to activate something, and the white wall behind Wu Zhi opened with a bang, revealing a large number of unconscious deaf-mute people in cages. After Lawrence saw it, a trace of greed flashed in his eyes. Just now, he slightly sensed that there were at least thousands of people inside. And although the quality of this batch of sacrifices was not top-notch, it was also good. It is worthy of the hand. It is really generous. Lawrence praised. Don't worry, since the contract has been signed, I will definitely call on the power of my lord to help you break the Dragon Bone Seal. Hearing what Lawrence said, the originally serious faces of Murakami, Botu and others also eased a lot. Okay, as long as Mr. Lawrence helps us obtain the dragon bones according to the contract, we will also help you kill the Wizard of Kamar-Taj according to the contract. As she spoke, Mrs. Gayo clapped her hands lightly. Click, click, click. In an instant, the left wall slowly opened, making a clicking sound. In Lawrence's eyes, after the wall opened, what came into view was a golden door with 2 golden dragons engraved on the left and right sides of the door. The golden dragons slowly swam on the surface of the door, and occasionally you could see a ripple or even 2 golden dragons playing. What surprised Lawrence was that he didn't feel any energy fluctuations emanating from the door. It wasn't even visible to the naked eye, and there was no perception at all. This is the sealed door of the Dragon Bones. The Dragon Bones exist in a macro-dimensional space, and this door is the entrance. As she spoke, Mrs. Gao called out to Hikan next to her, Hikan. In an instant, Hikan raised his right fist, infused a large amount of Hikan power, rushed towards the door, and then swung it down heavily. But Erika's right fist, which was glowing with black light, hit the golden door fiercely, but it seemed to hit a piece of cotton. There was no collision sound, only the whistling sound brought by the extremely fast fist wind. It seemed to prove that Erika was really strong just now. Seeing the strange scene just now, Lawrence's eyes flashed with surprise. Sir Lawrence, this seal seems to be able to absorb any power. We even tried to bomb it with a large yield bomb before, but it didn't hurt at all. Now, it depends on your means. As she said, Mrs. Gao and Erika and others retreated, leaving Lawrence to face the dragon bone seal in front of him. Lawrence looked at the dragon bone seal in front of him, with some doubts on his face. He saw the attack of Hikan just now with his own eyes. It was not weak, but after the attack, there was no ripple at all. What does this mean? Lawrence is still very clear. With a flash of thought, Lawrence raised his right palm, and a large black mist emerged from it, and floated in the air. Then it slowly condensed into a spear, and as the black mist continued to condense, it exuded a dark aura. As time passed, the pressure of the dark spear became greater and greater, until it reached its limit. Then buzz. Lawrence waved his hand, and the dark spear shot towards the seal. However, except for the whistling sound of the wind just now, the dark spear just touched the dragon bone seal, and sank directly into it, as if it was completely absorbed. And the seal was still intact. Lawrence saw that his full strength attack still did not hurt the dragon bone seal at all, and his face looked a little ugly. Sure enough, the dragon bone seal that made the hand helpless was not as simple as imagined. A lot of thoughts came to Lawrence's mind. After a moment, he turned to Mrs. Gao and said, Mrs. Gao, I want to use the power of my lord to break the seal now. In order to succeed once, all sacrifices must be sacrificed. Please move these sacrifices to the seal. I will personally hold the sacrifice ceremony and call on my lord. I believe that under the great power of my lord, it will be easy to break the seal. Hearing what Lawrence said, Mrs. Gao nodded slightly and whispered to the side. The next moment, a large number of black-clothed ninjas suddenly appeared and entered the secret room, where the sacrifices were just closed. Then, they opened the cages one by one, took out the unconscious deaf-mute people inside, and placed them in front of the dragon bone seal. Soon, thousands of unconscious deaf-mute people were piled in front of the seal. Feeling the large breath of life in front of him, Lawrence's heart was warm. Then, Mrs. Gao on the side emphasized, Sir Lawrence, is it okay now? Don't forget the contract signed before. In response, Lawrence nodded slightly to show that he understood. Then, he knelt on one knee on the ground, and a large amount of dark mist emerged from his body and spread around. However, perhaps due to the restrictions of the contract, the dark object did not directly cover the 5 fingers of the hand in the black sky. Soon, a large amount of black gradually condensed, and drops of black raindrops floated in the air. As Lawrence deliberately controlled it, all the raindrops sank into the deaf-mute people who became sacrifices. Not long after, black lines appeared on the foreheads of these deaf-mute people, and at the same time, their expressions began to become ferocious. Seeing this, Lawrence nodded with satisfaction. Although the sacrifice is good, adding some ingredients will easily get the praise and reward of Dormammu, the Lord of the Dark Dimension. The so-called adding some ingredients is actually to activate the negative emotions in their hearts, killing, greed, desire, etc. All activated. After seeing the spell was successful, Lawrence touched the ground with both palms. The next moment, under the gaze of Mrs. Gao and others, a large number of black silk threads began to emerge on the ground, gradually outlining a strange pattern, wrapping all the sacrifices. It was a large-scale sacrificial formation. At this moment, Lawrence knelt on the ground, clasped his hands together, stared at the sacrifice in front of him, and kept chanting. The great lord of the dark dimension Dormammu, your loyal believer Lawrence Torno presents the sacrifice in front of you, begging for the lord's attention. To break the seal in front of you, get the power of the dragon bone, and re-enter the world. P.S. Dear readers, I'm very sorry. Recently, some things have happened at home. Just after they were solved, some problems have popped up again, so the updates are a bit messy, but I will try to maintain the most basic updates. But now it should be solved, and the updates will definitely return to normal later. Also, tomorrow I will add more chapters for the reward of as long as it's stupid enough. Thank you for your support. I didn't dare to say that I would add more chapters yesterday because the matter was not solved yet, and I didn't dare to promise it casually. Now it has been solved. Tomorrow I will definitely add more chapters for the reward of as long as it's stupid enough. I'm very sorry. Chapter 252. Dormammu arrives. Dark latitude. Dark. Despair. Depravity. In the vast dark void, there are a large number of nebulae similar to colorful ones swimming slowly. Unlike the normal world, these nebulae seem to have life, not only emitting evil and dark breath, but also trying to devour the surrounding nebulae life. After devouring, a large area of nebulae life emerged, but in the end, it seemed to be supported and exploded directly. After splitting several small nebulae life, a new round of devouring will be carried out, and this cycle will repeat, just like a hungry ghost eager to devour, never satisfied, constantly producing more despair and dark breath. Apart from the colorful nebulae, broken pieces of the earth can be seen everywhere. There are no plants, no animals, and the whole land has no breath of life. Even the soil exudes the smell of darkness. At this moment, suddenly, in the center of the dark dimension, a large number of colorful nebulae formed a huge weird face. From the middle of his face, there are prism-like strips moving left and right. It was Dormammu, the lord of the dark dimension. Then, Dormammu opened his purple eyes beside his huge face and stared into the distance, as if he had sensed something. A trace of surprise rose on his face, and then turned into greed. The breath of the sacrifice from the earth was even faintly mixed with a trace of the breath of the origin of the dimension. Ancient One, this time I will destroy the earth and take back my origin. Boom. Dormammu roared in a low voice, and a huge vortex appeared in the void of the dark dimension, and soon it turned into a black hole. At this moment, Lawrence looked at the thousands of dry bones in front of him, and the dark power that permeated everywhere. Feeling the response of Dormammu, the lord of the dark dimension, his face showed ecstasy. While constantly kowtowing, he kept muttering to himself, "Great lord of the dark dimension, break the contract with the alien god. Your loyal believer Lawrence Tonneau awaits your arrival." The 5 fingers of the waiting meeting not far away saw this scene, especially the scene where Lawrence was a little crazy and suddenly felt uneasy. But thinking back to the contract they had signed before, they felt a little more stable. They had seen the power of the beast. Lawrence was absolutely unable to resist, and even the gods behind him would find it difficult to save Lawrence, unless it cost a huge price and his true body descended. But is this possible? If a mere 1,000 sacrifices could make an evil god descend, then their previous sacrifices should have made the beast descend into reality. However, boom. Lawrence suddenly felt a large amount of dark power surge from his body, and then a kind of magic emerged in his mind. Subconsciously, or as if controlled, he walked to the golden gate. With his hands touching it, a large amount of dark power continued to surge out of his body and sank into the black and gold gate. At the same time, his feet landed on the ground, and a large number of black lines began to gradually emerge and spread around. The 5 fingers of the hand seemed to feel the dark energy that kept flowing in the lines, and there was a hint of inquiry in his eyes, but he didn't say much. The other party was obviously breaking the dragon bone seal. No matter what the other party meant, they couldn't disturb him now, otherwise they would fail, and they couldn't bear it. As time passed slowly, looking at the dragon bone seal in front of him that still didn't change, Murakami showed a trace of impatience on his face. This person is just talking big. He spent so much money, but it didn't help to break the seal at all. This is a joke. Murakami muttered softly. He paid a lot for this batch of sacrifices. However, Mrs. Gao and others did not reply, but stared at the dragon bone seal closely, because they vaguely found that the original golden door seemed to have begun to appear a wisp of black. Soon, Murakami also found a trace and his expression began to become excited. Its dragon bone share is almost used up. If it is not replenished, it is very likely to face the danger of old age and death. At this moment, Lawrence felt the changes in the dragon bone seal in front of him. His expression was lifted, and he continued to pour a lot of dark power. At the same time, the black silk threads on the surface of the golden door began to become clearer and clearer. Gradually, the black silk threads gradually condensed into a rune pattern or magic brand, as if positioning. However, boom. The dragon bone seal seemed to sense the danger and began to shine with golden light and then spit out the residual energy it had swallowed before. At the same time, a black vortex appeared in front of Lawrence, swallowing all the energy that came towards him. Then, the black vortex seemed to be more greedy, taking advantage of the seal's counterattack, forcibly establishing a link, and directly began to absorb a large amount of power from the dragon bone seal, not allowing the seal to disconnect the link. At this moment, Lawrence looked a little excited, although he could no longer control his own actions. However, he felt a lot of Dormammu's breath from the black vortex in front of him. He prayed frantically in his heart, "The great lord of the dark latitude Dormammu, break the seal from the dragon bone, break the contract with the alien god, and come." Dormammu seemed to feel the prayers from his believers, or perhaps, sensed the restrictions and hidden dangers from his believers. As his thoughts turned, Lawrence's soul seemed to have triggered something, and a large number of black marks began to emerge from the depths, spreading to the depths of the soul. Soon, it seemed to touch a magic mark that also exuded a murderous and dark breath, or to be more precise, a magic contract. Then, it swallowed it directly, leaving the entire soul covered with black magic marks. At this moment, although Lawrence sensed that the contract had been broken, he was shocked to find that his consciousness was gradually blurred, as if he had been replaced. Soon, Lawrence's eyes turned dark black, and his body exuded large amounts of dark power. Most of the dragon bone seal on the opposite side had been eroded by the dark power. The hands and 5 fingers behind him began to look more cautious, because they just sensed that the magic contract had been seriously damaged. In other words, the other party might have directly violated the contract. However, such a situation had been expected by them, but because it was most important to break the dragon bone seal now, they did not do it. Soon, under their gaze, the dragon bone seal was gradually eroded by a large amount of dark power. At the same time, the golden light above the seal kept shining, as if resisting the dark power. But unfortunately, this power came directly from Dormammu, and its high quality and strong corrosiveness were top-notch. Even if the seal resisted stubbornly, it could only slow down the speed of erosion at most, and the situation of the seal heading towards its end did not change at all. After a moment, the dragon bone seal almost turned black. The dark power that kept pouring in was changing the nature of the seal, as if it wanted to make the seal its own. The dragon bone seal seemed to sense that it was heading towards a strange road, and then, it seemed to have touched a certain guard point. Snap, snap, snap. The cracking sound continued, and a large number of cracks began to appear on the surface of the seal. A large amount of hot light golden energy gushed out from the middle basin, and began to impact in all directions. It seemed that this was the GD counterattack of the dragon bone seal. Lawrence on the opposite side, or Dormammu's carrier, looked ugly. He was also ready to master this macro-dimensional space, and become the front line for it to descend on the earth. Now it seems that the idea is almost going to fail, and even he himself is in danger. Almost at the moment, when the energy gushed out, Dormammu controlled his body to evacuate quickly, and a large amount of dark power gushed out of his body, covering himself and resisting the energy impact in front of him. The hand behind him put his 5 fingers together, and his expression was happy when he saw the sound of the seal breaking. But then, with the golden light shining from the cracks in the seal, he suddenly felt creepy. Almost as if they were in sync, the 5 people followed the strange formation trajectory, their breaths connected, and their energy circulated. The rest of the Kunlun Ki energy continued to emerge in the air, forming a transparent defense shield, and also resisting the powerful energy impact. However, what made their expressions change drastically? Behind them, at some point, a red flame energy shield appeared, also resisting the impact of the light golden energy. And in the middle of the energy shield, 3 figures appeared. At this moment, Dormammu also noticed the movement behind him, especially the last red flame energy shield and the 3 figures, and a disdainful smile appeared on his face. The Wizard of Kamar-Taj dares to appear here, looking for death. PS. 5 updates today. Please subscribe to the genuine version and vote. Chapter 253 Soul Shock. Everyone in coma. At this moment, Lockhart found that the three of them had revealed their bodies to resist the energy impact, and he cursed inwardly. He originally wanted to wait for the Dormammu followers and the Five Fingers of the Order to fight each other to a draw before taking action. Now it seems that his plan may have failed. Go. With Lockhart's order, according to the previous discussion, Caecilius and Morin went straight to the Dormammu followers and the Five Fingers of the Order, and he himself once again faced Black Sky. Black Sky had fought before, and was quite familiar with it. He would try to defeat it first, and then support Caecilius and Morin. With a flash of thought, Lockhart waved his wand at Black Sky. Avada Kedavra. In an instant, a dark green light with a deadly breath shot towards Black Sky Emily from the tip of the wand. Bang. After Black Sky sensed it, he stepped heavily on the ground, and with a loud bang, he jumped up to avoid the killing curse. Seeing this, Lockhart's expression did not change. He just kept waving his wand, and said in a steady but fast tone, "Shattered into pieces. Blade cuts throat. Avada Kedavra." In an instant, a large amount of red and green magic light shot towards Hikang like raindrops. When Hikang saw this, he raised his arms in front of his chest, and a large amount of black mist emitting evil breath emerged, forming a dark shield wrapped in mist, resisting the large number of magic attacks in front of him. Bang, bang, bang. A large number of magic spells hit the dark shield, and with the sound of bangs, a large number of cracks began to appear on the shield. At the same time, Hikang raised his shield with his left hand, and held a long knife in his right hand, rushing towards Lockhart. At this moment, suddenly, a black giant python appeared behind Hikang. It was the basilisk. The basilisk looked at Hikang rushing towards his master, roared, and then bit Hikang directly. After Hikang felt the fatal threat behind him, he quickly dodged sideways. At the same time, Lockhart waved his wand one after another. Soul Shock. Mind Bomb. Instantly, a series of transparent ripples shot towards Hikang who was dodging. Hikang felt as if his mind was hit hard, and his eyes were confused for a moment, and he could not help but relax his guard. Then, taking advantage of Hikang's confusion, the basilisk followed the master's instructions, and swung its huge snake tail directly. It hit the opponent's body hard. Boom. With the huge force of the basilisk, Hikang was hit hard by the basilisk. With a loud bang, a huge pit appeared on the wall next to him. The hand on the side clasped its 5 fingers together, and saw that in less than half a minute, Hikang was severely injured because of the tacit joint attack of Lockhart and the basilisk. His expression changed, and Mrs. Gao shouted directly, "Ninja, do it." Instantly, a large number of black-clothed ninjas rushed towards the basilisk and Lockhart. Little snake. As Lockhart called the basilisk, the next moment, the basilisk rushed directly towards the black-clad ninjas, and directly waved its huge body, knocking many black-clad ninjas directly away, causing serious damage. Seeing this, the 5 fingers of the Hand-in-Hand Society looked a little ugly. Of course, they knew that the black-clad ninjas would probably have little effect, but if they did not take action to contain them, Hikang might be in trouble. But they did not have time to think too much. The magician Morin they were facing was not weak, and he knew a lot of advanced magic. If they were not careful, they would easily suffer losses. Lockhart took a look at the battle between the basilisk and the black-clad ninjas, and found that the little snake crushed the black-clad ninjas, so he no longer paid too much attention. Instead, he waved his wand again at the location where Hikang was, releasing the spell. Soul Shock. Quickly transform. In an instant, Hikang, who had just awakened, fell into a sluggish state again. The huge pit on the original wall gradually closed, wrapping Hikang's arms and body, revealing Hikang's head. Seeing this, Lockhart strode forward, holding the magic wand, and directly helped Hikang's forehead. Soul Sleep. Mind Correction. The spell went into Hikang's mind along the magic wand, and made a transformation of the soul. Hikang was just a puppet. Since the hand could control it, Lockhart would naturally not miss this opportunity. After all, Lockhart could fight Hikang in person, and he was not weaker than him. If he hadn't joined forces with the basilisk and attacked it by surprise, I'm afraid this battle would only continue to entangle. Their battle would only be smoother if he can't join in. After all, Dormammu was an evil god, and the more combat power he had, the more guaranteed he was. When Lockhart was about to modify Hikang's consciousness, suddenly, Cassilis saw Lockhart solve the battle and shouted directly. He was facing a carrier Dormammu, who was much stronger than him. He could only barely hold on now, and he needed more support now. After hearing this, Lockhart looked at the black sky opposite with regret, waved his wand again, and controlled his soul to fall into a deep sleep. Then he rushed directly to the battlefield between Caecilius and Dormammu's physical carrier, Avada Kedavra. As soon as he approached, Lockhart cast the most deadly Kedavra curse in his hand. However, Dormammu glanced at Lockhart. In an instant, a black vortex appeared in front of the green Kedavra curse and swallowed it directly. Seeing this, Lockhart's expression did not change, and he waved his wand again. Soul shock, mind shock, consciousness shock. A large number of spells targeting the soul and mind were continuously cast by Lockhart and rushed towards Dormammu. Dormammu groaned under a large number of attacks on the soul. He is not a complete version now, but just a wisp of distraction. Facing soul attacks, he is more vulnerable. However, Dormammu quickly returned to normal, looking at Lockhart not far away, and said in a contemptuous voice, "Looking for death." In an instant, a dark ripple emerged and quickly spread towards Cassilis and Lockhart. Soon, it covered the entire underground space, Merlin, the hand and the five fingers, the black sky, including the basilisk, the ninja, etc. At this time, Lockhart suddenly felt dizzy and almost lost consciousness, but his brain was still dizzy, as if he had forgotten what he was doing. The next moment, a colorful defense shield appeared on the surface of Lockhart's body, and the magic items he wore in advance were automatically activated. Although the surface of Cassilis and Merlin's bodies was not as much as Lockhart's, they were aware of a lot of defensive magic items they carried. At this time, Dormammu looked at the three Kamar-Taj mages in front of him, snorted coldly, and stopped caring. These mages are worthy of being the disciples of the Ancient One. Although they are all ants, they are all like turtles, and they have a lot of ways to save their lives, and even some space magic items have not been activated. If you want to solve it completely, I'm afraid it's really tricky. The longer the night, the more dreams there are. If we delay any further, it will only lead to more variables. If Ancient One reacts, it will be bad. The most important thing now is to open the Dragon Bone Seal, obtain the remaining dimensional origin inside, and at the same time, help the main body enter the earth. Chapter 254. Forbidden Magic Field. Death Move. Who am I? Where am I? Lockhart's brain was confused, and many questions kept popping up in his mind. He seemed to remember something very important, but he couldn't remember it clearly. This made him feel very uncomfortable. But then, he suddenly felt a cool and refreshing feeling in his brain, and his consciousness gradually regained consciousness. At the same time, the jade pendant on Lockhart's neck began to emit a lavender light, gradually sinking into Lockhart's mind, as if restoring Lockhart's mental state. Soon, Lockhart's consciousness returned to normal. He opened his eyes, looked at the unconscious people around him, including his pet, the basilisk, and smiled bitterly. Then, watching the golden door that originally symbolized the Dragon Bone Seal had collapsed, leaving only a dark hole, and Dormammu's physical carrier had disappeared, his face changed. This time it might be a mess. Who would have thought that Dormammu would come in person? According to their original plan, even if there was a mistake, Cassilis and Morin could both hold each other back. As for Lockhart and the basilisk, as long as they could quickly deal with Black Sky, or even bring Black Sky to join the battlefield, they would basically win the battle. But Dormammu actually entered the battlefield, which was beyond Lockhart's expectation. Then, the situation was completely defeated. It seems that he can only use the last trump card. Thinking about it, Lockhart waved his wand and cast a soul resurrection spell, covering Caecilius, Morin, and the basilisk, helping them to quickly regain consciousness. After casting the spell, Lockhart took out a few bottles of potion from the middle and began to replenish his magic power. At the same time, He walked in front of Black Sky and continued to correct the other party's consciousness to increase a certain amount of combat power for the final decisive battle. Well, while the 5 fingers of the hand were still in a coma, he killed them. But what surprised Lockhart was that after the death of the 5 fingers of the hand, there was no body left, but turned into ashes, which made Lockhart think about it. However, he didn't think about it for long. Because Caecilius had woken up first, and Morin followed closely behind. Only the basilisk was still in a coma, so Lockhart was a little anxious, but he was still calm on the surface, just calling through the contract in his heart. After a while, the basilisk shook its body slightly and slowly revived. At the same time, Black Sky, whose consciousness was corrected, followed Lockhart. Caecilius and Morin naturally knew it, and they would not say much. The 4 of them, and the beast looked at the dragon bone cave in front of them, and went in without hesitation. Caecilius had already sent a signal for help. Therefore, they did not need to defeat Dormammu. The most important thing was to delay, and not give Dormammu a chance. The Supreme Sorcerer would naturally deal with it. After everyone entered the dragon bone cave, the space changed, and Lockhart found that he and his group had entered an underground bronze hall. In the middle of the hall, a huge skeleton was placed on the ground. The skeleton was quite incomplete, but the huge energy fluctuations it emitted, as well as a trace of desire that rose in their hearts involuntarily, made them immediately understand that this was the dragon bone. Lockhart's eyes condensed, staring closely at Lawrence, or Dormammu, who was sitting cross-legged in the hall in front of the dragon bone. He saw the other party sitting cross-legged in front of the dragon bone, touching it with both hands. At the same time, a large number of black lines were found on the ground, forming a magic array. Not good, do it. As the New York Temple Guardian Mage, Caecilius's face changed drastically after recognizing the array, and he rushed towards Dormammu with a short stick in hand. However, bang! Caecilius swung the magic short stick and hit Dormammu heavily, but less than 1 meter away from Dormammu, a protective shield with black light quietly emerged. With a bang, it resisted Caecilius's attack, and Dormammu inside didn't care, continued to absorb the power of the dragon bone, and at the same time, communicated and sacrificed to the main body. A great opportunity. We must hurry up, otherwise there will be trouble when the Ancient One comes. Lockhart, this is bad. This is a formation to summon Dormammu. When the wizard Morin next to him saw Caecilius rushing out, he quickly introduced it, and then followed him to attack together with Caecilius. Hearing Morin's introduction, Lockhart's heart sank. If Dormammu came to the earth, it would definitely be a huge disaster. Thinking about it, Lockhart quickly rushed to the front of the defense shield. Then, he waved his wand, and took out a machine from the space extension bag. At the same time, he quickly said to Caecilius and Morin, Caecilius, Morin, leave quickly. Then, in order to prevent information leakage, Lockhart waved his wand and passed some information to the 2. After receiving the information, the 2 left quickly. Seeing this, Lockhart looked at the magic jammer in front of him, which was made of pure metal, with some regret. With a flash of thought, Lockhart pressed the red button in the middle. Then, a ripple that was invisible to the naked eye began to spread rapidly around. Lockhart, who was closest to him, instantly felt that his magic power was in disorder and he couldn't control it at all. The same was true for Caecilius and Morin beside him. The basilisk behind him twisted his body very uncomfortably, as if a human had lost his left and right hands. The black shield in front of Lockhart began to flicker continuously, as if it was strongly disturbed. Soon, as the magic jammer began to emit scalding heat, the shield disappeared. Dormammu inside, sensing that the magic power in his body was being disturbed by extremely high intensity, his face changed. He was just about to use his powerful mental power to suppress the chaotic magic power in his body. Then, he suddenly found that, at some point, a round ball with a flashing red dot appeared beside him, and he just reacted. Then, zizzy, 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 the round ball exploded, and a large amount of black liquid gushed out, spraying directly on Dormammu's body carrier. Almost instantly, Dormammu found that his body was rapidly eroded by the black liquid, turning black at a speed visible to the naked eye. A large amount of toxins appeared inside the body, and the dark magic in the body was severely damaged. At this moment, Lockhart, Cassilis, and Morin quickly retreated. They were afraid of being contaminated by the venom of the basilisk. The bomb just now was actually a venom bomb specially developed by Lockhart for Tony. It is specially used in the case of magic interference or forbidden magic. The venom of the basilisk is placed inside, which not only contains extremely strong toxins and has extremely strong magic breaking power, but also has corrosiveness that is not weaker than sulfuric acid. In Lockhart's eyes, the part of Dormammu's body carrier that was stained with venom at this moment was almost eroded clean, leaving only pieces of black bones. This is a trump card carefully prepared by Lockhart when facing a strong enemy. First, the magic is forbidden, so that the enemy loses control of magic, and then the venom of the basilisk is directly used, and the enemy cannot defend at all. Basically, the moment of being contaminated, he will die on the spot. The powerful toxins of the basilisk and the magic breaking properties, no matter how strong his magic is, can't play any role. It can be said that it was very clean and neat. As long as the opponent was not prepared in advance, he would definitely not be able to escape this fatal move. However, Lockhart saw Dormammu with a body that looked like a skeleton and corroded by venom, staring at him, and said in a cold tone, "And you are looking for death." Chapter 255, Magic Fortress, Dark Fantasy. At this moment, Dormammu felt that his body was in tatters, and his anger swelled in his heart. If it were not for his own spirit, his body would have collapsed, and even his bones would have fallen off. It can be said that he was possessed by a corpse, a tattered corpse, and if he had not been worried that his spiritual body would be rejected by the earth after leaving this corpse, he would have chosen to leave it long ago. Despite this, he still felt that the earth's rejection of him continued to intensify. This is the top defensive magic circle that Kamar-Taj has built on the earth for thousands of years, with the 3 major temples as the core, covering the entire earth. It is also an important factor in preventing these dimensional demons from invading the earth. It was better to have a physical body to cover it, but now, at this moment, Lockhart looked at the cold and angry eyes from Dormammu, and his heart jumped. The body is rotten like this, but he is not dead yet. He is worthy of being a dimensional demon. Seeing Dormammu's attitude, Lockhart silently took out a venom bomb and threw it at Dormammu again, while the forbidden magic field was still effective. And Dormammu dodged quickly before he finished cursing when he saw the venom bomb coming towards him. Just now, a venom bomb almost destroyed most of his body. Another one would definitely destroy the remaining flesh of him. At this time, Lockhart looked at the magic jammer beside him and sighed helplessly. Most of the materials of this magic jammer were made of the remaining Eurometal of the destroyer armor. Some of its internal structures were also made of extremely precious and solid magic metal. Therefore, the effect was so obvious that it directly formed a forbidden magic area. Of course, this was because Lockhart had activated the most peak state. In a short period of time, its effect even made Dormammu unable to cast magic. But the result was obvious. Lockhart looked at the originally cold silver-white surface of the magic jammer and turned into a hot fiery red. Sure enough, zizzy, zizzy, zizzy. With the sound of malfunction inside the magic jammer, Lockhart felt that the disordered magic in his body returned to normal again. At the moment of recovery, Lockhart looked at the half-crippled Dormammu and waved his wand directly. Avada Kedavra. Instantly, a green light flew towards Dormammu. Dormammu felt the attack of the Kedavra curse on his soul and frowned slightly. Under normal circumstances, he would not have needed to dodge this attack. Unfortunately, now that most of his body was destroyed, he could only rely on his mental power to control it. With his mind turning, a large amount of dark magic surged out, and a magic wall composed of pure dark magic stood in front of him. Bang! With a bang, the Kedavra curse hit the magic wall, causing a slight ripple, but then it returned to normal. The next moment, around Dormammu, or the Dragon Bone, one magic wall after another gradually emerged. Crack, crack, crack. Several magic walls emerged, forming a magic fortress that enveloped him, and the Dragon Bone. Although the magic wall was purely composed of a large amount of dark power, its surface was unusually crystal clear, like glass. Dormammu was inside the magic fortress, looking at Lockhart and others with cold eyes, especially Lockhart who had just thrown the venom bomb. His eyes were filled with murderous intent. Then he turned around immediately and continued to walk to the dragon bone. The ritual was broken just now, and now it needs to be restarted. If it is delayed any longer, I'm afraid that I will miss this good opportunity to descend. Now is not the time to show my courage for a moment. As for the ant just now, after I descend, I will let him know what eternal torture is and what it means to be worse than death. Lockhart's heart jumped at Dormammu's gaze, but he also felt helpless. He didn't want to provoke Dormammu, but the situation had come to this. If he didn't take action, would he just sit there and wait for death? What's more, Master Ancient One is still alive and can even live for several more years. Well, beating Dormammu is the political correctness of being a Kamar-Taj wizard. With his thoughts turning, Lockhart looked at the solid black wall in front of him and called the basilisk directly. Roar. The basilisk roared, swung its huge tail, and hit the magic wall in front of it heavily. Boom. With a roar, the tail hit the wall, and dense cracks appeared. But the next moment, the cracks recovered quickly under the replenishment of a large amount of dark magic. After seeing this, Cassilis and Morin on the side stared at Dormammu who was sitting cross-legged in front of the dragon bone. The two stood together, holding the hanging ring at the same time, sliding slightly, outlining a complex rune. Soon, a large number of red flame spears appeared in the air and shot at the magic wall, followed by continuous bangs. And the black sky on the side, under Lockhart's call, a large amount of black sky power condensed behind it, forming a Black Panther shape. Then, a large amount of black sky power in the Black Panther's mouth began to condense into a dark light ball. Boom. The dark light ball quickly shot towards the magic wall, making a roaring sound. Lockhart was floating in the air, surrounded by balls of blue fire. Like everyone else, he shot at the magic wall on the opposite side. Whoosh. Boom. Bang. 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 In a moment, the red flame-like spear, the dark light ball, and the blue fire hit the magic wall on the opposite side one after another. In addition, in the spare time, the basilisk swung its huge snake tail vigorously and slammed into the magic wall. It was visible to the naked eye that a large number of cracks quickly appeared in the magic wall. Although the cracks were constantly easing, the speed of its destruction was obviously greater than the speed of repair. Soon, boom. With a roar, the magic wall exploded. At the moment of the explosion, the basilisk took this opportunity to directly swing its snake tail and smashed it hard at Dormammu who was sitting cross-legged on the ground. Whoosh. At the moment, when the basilisk was about to attack, a black mist directly enveloped Dormammu. The next moment, bang. With a loud bang, the ground where Dormammu was sitting cross-legged was smashed into pieces by the giant tail of the basilisk, and cracks appeared on the surrounding ground. However, Dormammu had disappeared, and a black mist appeared in the air. After the mist dissipated, Dormammu floated in the air with his tattered body, staring at everyone and said coldly, "You ants are given a chance to live, but you don't cherish it. It seems that death is your only destination." As soon as the voice fell, a large number of dark blades appeared in front of Dormammu, and then shot at Lockhart, the basilisk and others. Little snake. Lockhart called the basilisk, reminding it to shrink its body and prepare for defense. Then he waved his wand and opened a scalar shield in front of him to resist the dark blade that was coming. Bang, bang, bang. Lockhart, Cassilis, Morin, and Hikang all resisted the attack through their own defense methods, making a bang bang sound. Only the basilisk could rely on its strong body to resist a large number of dark blades. Roar. The basilisk let out a painful wail. Although its scales had extremely strong magic defense, the opponent who cast the spell was Dormammu, the demon god of the dark dimension. In an instant, bloody scars appeared one after another on the basilisk's body. Then, the bloody wounds gradually turned black, which was a sign of being eroded by dark magic. Roar. The dark erosion seemed to bring it great pain, and the basilisk roared again. Then it shrank its body as much as possible according to the master's instructions. Lockhart also quickly rushed to the basilisk. At the same time, he waved his wand and summoned a group of blue fierce fires, rushing towards Dormammu floating in the air. Dormammu looked at the blue fierce fire in front of him, a little curious. This was the first time he saw this kind of magic flame, and it felt a little strange. But his mind turned, and a large black mist engulfed it, as if he wanted to completely suppress the flame. But then, the fiendfire passed through a large amount of black mist. Although it was suppressed and shrunk by half a circle, it still hit Dormammu. Whoosh. With a whoosh, the blue fiendfire touched Dormammu's body. As if stimulated, the fiendfire expanded rapidly, burning Dormammu's body to ashes at an extremely fast speed. This surprised Lockhart, who had just put the little snake away, and even felt a little happy in his heart. Dormammu, he is finally dead this time. However, a cold voice rang throughout the hall. I didn't expect that you ants could do such a thing. In that case, you can be my temporary body. Dark illusion. PS. The 5th update will be updated after 6 o'clock, and an additional update will be added for those who are stupid enough to do it. Chapter 256 System Action. Origin of Power. After Lockhart heard the voice in the air, he felt uneasy. The next moment, he felt a huge spiritual force attacking him. Then, his eyes went dark and his consciousness began to blur. Then damn, what is this? Lockhart, who was originally conscious, suddenly heard a familiar curse, and his consciousness began to condense slightly. At the same time, a lot of information came to his mind. The host's soul is detected to be affected. Analyzing the cause, the host's soul is eroded by the god-level soul. Analyzing the risk, with the host's current state, although it can resist, the soul must be polluted. To ensure the purity of the host's soul, the system consumes energy, devours the target, and nourishes the host's soul power. Devour warning. The other party has escaped, only 40% of the soul is devoured. Lockhart, whose consciousness was just slightly blurred, suddenly felt his soul wrapped by a warm force, as if he was taking a hot bath. Then, while his consciousness was awake, Lockhart found that his mental power was rising rapidly. At the same time, a series of fragmented memories emerged in his mind, many of which were information about the dark dimension, and a lot of bloody black magic, and the origin of the dimension. Soon, after Lockhart roughly sorted out the memory fragments in his mind, he opened his eyes and looked around, and found that Cassilis, Morin, Hekang and others were all in a coma. With his thoughts turning, Lockhart set his eyes on the dragon bone, and a trace of heat flashed in his eyes. In the memory fragments of Dormammu, it was explained why he spent a huge amount of money to come in person this time. Because he sensed that the dragon bone contained a force of the origin of the dimension, and the so-called life extension and energy enhancement are the most basic functions. According to the remaining information in the mind, for Dormammu, by sacrificing this source of power, a new channel can be opened up to lead the deity to come. Otherwise, with the existence of the 3 major temples, Dormammu would never come to the earth. Only part of the power can be descended. At most, like now, it costs a huge price to descend on the soul, and there is always the risk of being suppressed and driven away. The power of the origin of the dimension is the root of Dormammu's soul coming in person. For wizards like Lockhart, after absorbing the power of the latitude origin, not only can their strength be improved quickly, but also their potential and talents in all aspects can be improved in all aspects. Unfortunately, if the soul absorbs the complete power of the origin of a dimension, there is a chance to become the master of the dimension. However, although the dragon bone is only a fragment of the origin of a dimension, it is enough for Lockhart. With his mind turning, Lockhart walked directly to the dragon bone. Looking at the crystal clear dragon bone and the gentle energy it exudes, Lockhart reached out to touch it, and his mental power directly probed into the dragon bone, preparing to engrave runes according to the method in his memory, and extract the origin. Suddenly it is found that the high purity origin power is of great benefit to the host's soul improvement. It is recommended to integrate it as soon as possible. Danger is detected nearby, and the system is automatically extracting. Extraction is completed, and the host can use it at any time. Seeing the information emerging in his mind, Lockhart's mouth twitched. This system really cares about his soul. However, he didn't have time to think deeply. Because how? Suddenly feeling a dangerous breath coming from behind him, Lockhart shook his right bracelet slightly. In an instant, a blue defense shield emerged. Bang! A black knife light collided with the blue defense shield. With a bang, the black light shattered, and a large number of cracks appeared in the blue defense shield. Lockhart turned around and saw Black Sky Erica with a lot of black lines on her forehead, holding two knives at him. "Mage, what is on your soul?" Dormammu asked with some fear through Erica's body. If he hadn't escaped in time just now, I'm afraid the whole soul would have been swallowed. However, sensing that the other party was approaching the dragon bone, Dormammu still abandoned the two best mage bodies next to him and chose Black Sky Erica, which was the easiest to invade. However, Lockhart did not respond to Dormammu's question, but remained silent. "Mage, leave the dragon bone, I will spare the lives of your two friends." Sensing that the two mages beside him were beginning to wake up, Dormammu turned his mind and started to provoke. "If you want to take the dragon bone for yourself, then watch me attack them. How about it?" As he said that, he waved the long knife in his hand and gently slashed at Caecilius and Morin beside him. It seemed that Lockhart's answer did not satisfy him, and he was ready to attack Caecilius and Morin at any time. Well, in fact, he would rather kill Lockhart directly with his strong strength. Unfortunately, a series of changes have greatly depleted his mental strength, especially the hard loss he suffered from Lockhart's soul just now, which directly caused him to suffer a heavy blow. In particular, he sensed a threat from Lockhart's soul that was no less than the level of the Lord of Dimensions, so he was even more afraid. Hearing what Dormammu said, Lockhart naturally knew the trap in the other party's words. After thinking about it, he stretched out his wand and gently pointed at the dragon bone behind him. The dragon bone floated behind Lockhart, and then said to Dormammu, "I can give you the dragon bone, but how can I guarantee that you will let my two friends go? Your reputation, Dormammu, you know it in your heart. If there is no guarantee, I will never give you the dragon bone." Hearing Lockhart kick the ball back, Dormammu thought for a while and said, "I can sign a contract to ensure that the transaction is completed." "I don't believe it." Lockhart shook his head directly and said, "Magic contract. With your ability, it is easy to regret it. Unless you are willing to sign the contract under the witness of Vishanti." Hearing Lockhart's request, Dormammu directly refused in silence. Vishanti's power is stronger than his, and with his witness, the Ancient One is likely to know it at the same time. It will be more troublesome at that time. You know, the Ancient One has signed a contract with him before, and he has suffered a lot in this regard. At this time, Caecilius and Morin on the side gradually woke up. "Lockhart, don't worry about me. Don't let Dormammu get it." Caecilius, who had just woken up, shouted loudly. "Yes, Lockhart, in history, wizards who have traded with Dormammu have never had a good ending." Wizard Morin also said loudly, "Never believe all his promises." "My two wizards, you hurt my heart a little when you say that," Dormammu said lightly, fiddling with the two rings in his hands. "I have had many deals with the supreme sorcerer of your Kamar-Taj. He has lived for so many years, and it is all thanks to the power of my dark dimension." Dormammu tempted Caecilius, based on the information he had just obtained from the souls of the two people. This mage named Caecilius, "If you want immortality, you can learn from your supreme sorcerer Guyi. With the help of the power of the dark dimension, you can live forever. After all, borrowing the power of Vishanti is borrowing, and borrowing the power of the dark dimension is also borrowing, isn't it?" Then he tempted the Mage Morin next to him. "Mage Morin, the knowledge stored in the dark dimension is much more than that of Kamar-Taj. You can completely sacrifice and gain the corresponding knowledge and lifespan." At this moment, suddenly, a familiar voice came to Dormammu's ears. "Dormammu, you don't need to worry about my students. Just do your own thing." Hearing the voice next to his ear, Dormammu's body stiffened, and he tilted his head slightly. It was the Sorcerer Supreme of Kamar-Taj, Ancient One. "P.S. I'm sorry, as long as I'm stupid enough, I was busy in the past 2 days, so I didn't update. I will make up for it today." If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 257, Ancient One's Taunting. Lockhart's Request. Ancient One. Dormammu turned his head and looked at the Ancient One mage not far away, shouting angrily. The damn Ancient One not only robbed him of the power of the Dark Dimension, but also frequently took advantage of it to fleece him and plunder his energy. Otherwise, he would not have been irreconcilable with the Mage of Kamar-Taj. It can be said that, if he could not beat the Ancient One, Dormammu would have fought with the Ancient One to the death. TSK. The Ancient One looked at the Emily version of Dormammu in front of him and teased. I didn't expect that. Dormammu, you also like women's clothes? As he said, the Ancient One stretched out his hand and slashed, and a straight mirror fell on the opposite side of Dormammu. Don't say, you are really different in women's clothes. Damn Ancient One. Dormammu looked at Emily's body in front of the mirror, and he didn't care at first. As a result, he heard the ridicule of the Ancient One, and his anger surged. Looking at Cassilis on the side, he swung the knife directly, as if to vent his anger. Results Dormammu, do you look down on me too much? The Ancient One continued to tease. Or does entering a woman's body reduce your IQ? With your current strength, you still want to kill my students in front of me. I don't know what you are thinking. As he said that, the Ancient One waved his hand gently. In an instant, the space changed, and Caecilius and Morin moved to the side of the Ancient One. And Dormammu's knife light, with a bang, drew a deep mark on the ground. Supreme Sorcerer, it's a good thing you arrived in time, otherwise Morin and Caecilius. At this moment, Lockhart, carrying the dragon bone, walked to the front of the Ancient One, and said with a hint of relief, Lockhart, you performed very well this time. The Ancient One praised. This time, you successfully interrupted the possibility of Dormammu's arrival, and made a huge contribution to protecting the world. It is worthy for more Kamar-Taj mages to learn. This is what we should do. Lockhart, Caecilius, and Morin said in unison. By the way, Supreme Sorcerer, this is the dragon bone that Dormammu has always wanted. Lockhart quickly controlled the dragon bone to land in front of the Ancient One and said, take a look. Caecilius and Morin on the side looked at the Supreme Sorcerer in front of them with great expectation. It can be said that the action of the three of them this time was facilitated by Lockhart, and the key is that Lockhart mentioned that the dragon bone has the effect of prolonging life. This is definitely a temptation that Caecilius cannot refuse, and Morin has no reason to resist. However, the current situation is beyond their control. Dormammu's soul has descended, and the Supreme Sorcerer has arrived. It is no longer up to them to decide who the dragon bone belongs to. The Ancient One naturally knew what the students were thinking, and smiled softly. The dragon bone is a good thing, but this is your spoils of war. You can discuss and distribute it among yourselves. However, some things in the dragon bone still need to be cleaned before they can be used. As he spoke, the Ancient One gently waved his hand, and the originally crystal clear dragon bone on the ground suddenly appeared with a large number of black silk threads on the surface, and it seemed like a worm, constantly wriggling. Seeing this scene, Caecilius and Morin took a breath of cold air. They didn't feel anything strange just now. When Dormammu saw the action of the Ancient One, he snorted coldly, and didn't say much. It's a pity that the backhand he left was seen by the Ancient One. Otherwise, maybe he could develop some believers among the mages in Kamar-Taj. Even if it doesn't play a big role, it's a good thing to disgust the Ancient One. Seeing Dormammu's action, the Ancient One smiled and reached out again. The black silk thread that was swimming on the surface of the dragon bone seemed to be attracted by something, and quickly broke away from the dragon bone, and gathered in the hands of the Ancient One. Soon, a huge black ball floated in the hands of the Ancient One, emitting a large amount of dark power. Then, a golden flame appeared in his hand, and the black ball melted quickly. The originally crystal clear dragon bone on the ground suddenly shrank a circle, and a greyish white color could be vaguely seen. Seeing this, Lockhart thanked the Ancient One without any hesitation. Then he waved his wand, and divided the dragon bone into 3 parts according to the previous discussion of the 3 people. Lockhart took 40%, and Caecilius and Morin each took 30%. In response, Caecilius and Morin both took it, and Lockhart looked at the wizard next to him. He cut the dragon bone in his hand in half again, controlled it to float in front of the Ancient One, and said respectfully, Sorcerer Supreme, I want to ask you a favor. Ancient One looked at Lockhart and the dragon bone in front of him with interest and said softly, "Tell me." Hearing the answer from Ancient One, Lockhart looked at Dormammu beside him and hesitated slightly. When the Ancient One saw Lockhart's expression, he said to Dormammu, "Dormammu, do you want a decent or undignified way of leaving? I can satisfy you with either." After hearing what the Ancient One said, Dormammu snorted coldly and said, "I will leave by myself. You don't have to do it." At this point, Lockhart seemed to think of something and reminded the Ancient One, "Sorcerer Supreme, Erica just fought side by side with us to repel Dormammu together, but she was controlled by Dormammu for a moment." Hearing this, the Ancient One looked at Erica controlled by Dormammu thoughtfully and said to Dormammu, "Dormammu, did you hear what my student said? Later, I don't want to go to the dark dimension again. After all, there is nothing good in your dark dimension." Hearing what the Ancient One said, Dormammu's face turned black, as if he recalled that the Ancient One had entered his own dark dimension before, as if it was like entering the back garden, burning, killing, looting, and doing all kinds of evil. He snorted coldly and did not answer, but actively controlled his soul to leave Erica's body. Then he actively followed the repulsion of the earth and returned to his own dark dimension. When Dormammu's soul left, Erica collapsed to the ground. Seeing this, the Ancient One lightly flicked his fingers, and a light golden light shone on Erica's body. At the same time, a light black mist floated out of Erica's body and then disappeared. It's true that a dog can't change its eating habits. Faintly, Lockhart seemed to hear the Ancient One muttering softly. However, he didn't care. He waited until Dormammu left completely before speaking to the Ancient One. "Supreme Sorcerer, this macro-dimensional space was previously used to store dragon bones. However, with the departure of the dragon bones, I think this space has another use. Do you think it would be convenient for you to move this dimensional space to my Wangxiang bookstore? P.S. Dear big guys, please vote. Thanks to bookfriend 20170709224939568, Moming's secretary, OSJJ, and Neonane for the monthly vote. Chapter 258 The Awakening of the Hydra. Hydra, an underground base. In a closed room deep in the base, Alexander Pierce was silently looking at the bald agent lying on the machine in front of him, Sitwell. At this moment, Sitwell's face was very panicked. Looking at the former director Pierce in front of him, he said in a panic, "Director, what are you doing? I have always been loyal to S.H.I.E.L.D." Looking at Sitwell tied to the machine, with a panicked look, Pierce said lightly, "Sitwell, relax. You participated in a confidential mission before, and after completing it, your memory was sealed. Now, you need to return to unlock your memory again." Hearing what Pierce, the former director of S.H.I.E.L.D., said, Sitwell relaxed slightly, but his expression was still a little nervous. "Okay, director. Then In an instant, the tied Sitwell suddenly felt as if his back was half pierced by a large number of needles, and then it seemed to be infused with some liquid. Severe pain spread from the brain nerves to the limbs. Sitwell trembled all over and couldn't help shouting loudly. But soon, the volume of the voice dropped, and his eyes became dull. At the same time, two pieces of electrified cloth that seemed to be connected to the wires were tightly pressed together on the side of the brain's temple. Z. The current stimulated the temple regularly, as if awakening the hidden memories in Sitwell's mind. However, the naked eye can see that Sitwell's body is constantly twitching, his eyes are dull, and even a trace of white foam appears at the corners of his mouth. After a while, when Sitwell's eyes began to gather, a Hydra personnel wearing a white coat next to him, who looked like a medical staff, picked up the notebook in his hand. He began to recite one word at a time. Train, glasses, canned food, mineral water. Soon, the other party finished reciting silently, and at this time, Sitwell's mind was constantly flooded with a lot of information, and his expression kept changing. After a while, his eyes began to focus. Then, Pierce, who was watching from the side, walked up to him and asked directly, "Report your identity and tell me, who are you loyal to?" "Sir, I'm number 16758, and my current name is Jasper Sitwell. I'm a Hydra soldier, and later I was sent to join SHIELD. I'm subordinate to Commander Pierce, and I'm willing to devote my life to Commander Pierce and the new world. Long live Hydra. After hearing Sitwell's answer, Pierce nodded with satisfaction. Then, he nodded to the Hydra agent in a white coat next to him. So the other party took out a bottle of transparent injection, directly pierced Sitwell's arm, and then injected it. After a while, Sitwell fell into a deep sleep. Then the Hydra agent in a white coat said respectfully, "Sir, you only need to wait 2 or 3 hours for the other party to recover all his memories. This sleeping mission is over." Hearing this, Pierce nodded slightly, and then ordered, after Sitwell wakes up, let him continue to perform his mission, control the intelligence system of S.H.I.E.L.D. Then, Pierce turned and left. At the same time, Sitwell, who was sleeping, seemed to sense something in the pale golden dragon magic brand deep in his mind. Gradually flickering, the originally opened memory seal gradually closed. A large number of memories began to return. New York City, Universal Book Cafe. Looking at the huge book cafe in front of him, Lockhart nodded with satisfaction. As expected of the Supreme Sorcerer, although the macro-dimensional space is microscopic, it is relative to the one-dimensional world. The actual area is almost comparable to a small or medium-sized street, and the Supreme Sorcerer easily integrated it into the Universal Book Cafe. The location of the future Universal Book Cafe will be more secretive and safer. Unless you have spatial abilities, you can't enter without the invitation of the Universal Book Cafe. Because, although the current Universal Book Cafe is still in its original location, it is actually in another space. In other words, even if the missile explodes at his door, it can't hurt the Universal Book Cafe at all. Thinking about it, Lockhart stretched out his wand and slightly stroked it, and a red flame portal opened. On the opposite side was a bedroom, and on the bed in the bedroom, there was a black-haired woman sitting cross-legged, as if she was meditating and regulating her breath. "Erica, come and take a look." Hart waved to Erica. At the same time, Erica opened her eyes, and saw the portal in front of her jumped up, and she walked through it in 3 or 2 steps. "Boss, is this where I will work in the future?" Erica looked around curiously. "Yes, you should get familiar with the surrounding environment first. In the future, you will be responsible for this Universal Book Cafe with my apprentice Vera," Lockhart said with a smile. When Erica was Black Sky, although she was brainwashed and used as a puppet, her fighting power was not too weak. In fact, if he and the Basilisk had not joined forces to attack, it would have been impossible to defeat Erica in a short time. As for Lockhart himself, the top fighting power in his hands has always been scarce. It can be said that except for him and the Basilisk, the fighting power is not weak, and the others can only be said to be average. Therefore, he can't let Erica go, this top fighting power that can be used for free. In short, they are all brainwashed. What's wrong with him saving her and working for him? In any case, it is 10,000 times better than following the hand, not to mention that he is the one who pays her salary. "Erica, you go around first. This place will reopen in a few days. If you have any problems in the meantime, you can directly contact Vera through the Golden Dragon magic brand on your arm, or contact me." "Okay, boss." Erica nodded gently, indicating that she understood, and then looked around curiously. Seeing this, Lockhart didn't care. He waved the magic wand in his hand, and opened a portal. Now, it is almost time to return to the Harry Potter world, and some details must be done in advance. For example, Peter's blood, the magic suitcase space, Gugu's exclusive exercise room. "Gugu, there are still 10 minutes to the end, come on, I believe you can do it." Peter stood on a treadmill, running, and encouraged Gugu, who was also on a small treadmill on the table next to him. Peter also put a lot of thought into Gugu's exercise. At the beginning, Gugu was often lazy. He thought of many ways, but found that none of them worked. No matter how he encouraged, even with food stimulation, the effect can only last for a short time. Just like a child, he may work hard at the beginning, but then he slowly started to slack off and be lazy. Peter was a little helpless. Later, he asked Mary for advice, wanting to ask how to get a child to exercise every day. Originally, he just asked Mary out of boredom, because since Mary opened a new book cafe, she has focused on the book cafe, and chatted with him less and less. Sometimes, he even cooked or ordered takeaway for meals. Although he had a lot more free time and pocket money, Peter felt a little uncomfortable. So, when he had time, Peter would take the initiative to chat with Mary, share some interesting things about school, and complain about some troubles. Naturally, Peter also complained about Gugu's problem. But Peter never expected that Mary gave him a suggestion, which he didn't expect. He tried it, and found that the effect was really good. Well, Mary, who evolved into Bossman, really worked. Peter summed it up. The core of this method is, lead by example. Well, if you want Gugu to exercise, he, Spider-Man Peter, must also exercise beside him. And he must work harder and the difficulty of exercise must be higher. Take yourself as an example, encourage him more often, and let Gugu take action. As for the effect Gugu. Hearing what Peter said, Gugu looked at Peter who was running and called out, "Okay, Gugu, I believe you can do it. After exercise, let's go to my house to play. I have a lot of good things at home." Gugu. Don't worry, I'll buy you some milk tea in advance, and it's your favorite iced one. Gugu. After hearing Peter's reply, Gugu called out happily and continued to run forward. At this moment, suddenly, a portal quietly opened, and Lockhart walked out of it. Chapter 259 Spider-Man's Development Path. Peter, you did a great job. Lockhart looked at Gugu and Peter who were running, and praised, "It was the best decision I made to ask you to come and exercise." Gugu. Hearing Professor Lockhart's praise for himself, Peter smiled embarrassedly. Gugu beside him also shouted, as if to say, "Breeder, didn't you see how hard I worked? Gugu, you are also very good. You can persist for so long." Hearing Gugu's cry, Lockhart also praised Gugu. "I hope you can master more magic in the future." Gugu. Hearing the breeder's praise, Gugu was a little unhappy. Is this a reward? Shouldn't he let himself rest and eat some delicious food? Why did he let him practice magic again? Lockhart ignored Gugu's complaints. He said to Peter, "Peter, I want to talk to you about something. Do you think it's convenient?" After hearing what Lockhart said, Peter glanced at Gugu and found that Gugu was looking forward to seeing him. It seemed that he was looking forward to seeing him leave with Professor Lockhart, and he felt a little helpless. Then he said to Lockhart, "Okay, Professor Lockhart, anytime." Then, he said to Gugu beside him, "Gugu, you take a rest first, and I will continue to make up the rest when I come back." Gugu. After hearing what Peter said, Gugu called out weakly, indicating that he understood. It was also planning to take a day off today after Peter was called away by the keeper. Lockhart looked at the activities of the man and the beast, with a slight smile on his face. He stretched out his wand, and opened a portal to the study. Then, he stepped in, and Peter followed closely behind. Lockhart's study. "Peter, sit down. What do you want to drink? Milk, coffee, cola?" Lockhart pointed to the seat and cup in front of the desk and said gently, "Coke is fine, Professor, Coke is fine." Hearing Lockhart's question, Peter hurriedly sat down, and then said quickly, a little nervous. Lockhart stretched out his wand and gently pointed it at the cup in front of Peter. The bubbling Coke slowly came up. He said, "Peter, relax, it's not a big deal. I've seen how you and Gugu have been doing recently. Gugu has been able to persist in training, and even mastered some magic. You definitely have made an indispensable contribution to it." Lockhart said gently, "Finally, the problem that was weighing on my mind has been solved. Gugu is like a little child. He has good talent, but he very much needs patient teaching, and I don't have much time. I'll have to trouble you later." "Okay, Professor Lockhart, Gugu is my good friend. I'm very happy that he has grown up," Peter said quickly. After hearing this, Lockhart smiled gently, and then, as if he had thought of something, he said, "By the way, Peter, how is the magic item that Bruno made for you? Is there anything wrong with it?" Hearing this, Peter raised his right hand slightly, shook the silver white bracelet on his right arm, and said excitedly, "Professor Lockhart, this magic item is great. There is a large space inside, which can hold a lot of things, and it can also make me invisible, and it is also very convenient for me to shoot spider silk. It's okay as long as it works well." Lockhart nodded and said with satisfaction. Then, Lockhart asked, "By the way, Peter, do you want to further improve your strength? Professor Lockhart, can I also learn magic? Peter asked excitedly. It would be great if he could also learn those cool magic. However, when Lockhart heard Peter's question, he shook his head slightly and said, Peter, your physique is a little special. Although you can learn magic, it's a waste of your talent. I found a way that is very suitable for you. At this point, Lockhart paused, looked at Peter's expectant eyes, and said, Peter, you talked to me before. You have your current abilities because you were bitten by a spider. I also explored your body before and found that your body is very fusionable, especially for the fusion of spider power. It can be said to be extremely smooth and ingenious, as if it belongs to you. After my serious consideration, you can continue to integrate the power of spiders, not just the spiders we usually see, but also some magical spiders that possess strange abilities. I've read in books before that some spiders have mastered the power of fire and can control fire. Others have bodies like steel. Some spiders even have the power to jump through space, like Goo. In fact, I even found in ancient books that some spiders have achieved gods, and the subsequent paths are all paths you can imitate. How do you feel about this path? Lockhart asked gently. Really? Professor Lockhart? Peter looked a little excited. Hearing Lockhart's big promise, Peter had already imagined himself mastering all kinds of magical powers in his mind, such as a body of steel, controlling fire, space jump, etc. Of course, Peter. Lockhart smiled softly and said meaningfully, in my eyes, you, like Vera and Ian, are all very good seedlings. Lockhart's words seemed to remind Peter, and Peter asked with some expectation, then Professor Lockhart, can I be your student like Vera? Of course, Peter. Lockhart smiled and nodded, saying, I believe most teachers will not refuse a gifted student like you. In the future, you can receive training from Captain Steve with Vera and the others as usual. As for your strength, I will think of a way here and call you then. Thank you, Professor Lockhart. No, mentor. Peter changed his words excitedly. Lockhart looked at the excited Peter in front of him, and the corners of his mouth curled up. It was not surprising that Peter wanted to be his student. He had previously asked Peter to attend Steve's training, and even asked him to do combat training with Vera, Ian and others, which was actually laying the groundwork. You know, Spider-Man Peter's potential is not low. In his previous life, he had heard that Spider-Man's power came from the multiverse. Although it is not known whether it is true or not, Peter's magical physique alone is enough for Lockhart to take him under his wing. As for the development route mentioned earlier, Lockhart did think about it and thought that this path is very suitable for Peter. Maybe, the Spider-Man he trained can rank among the top Spider-Men in the multiverse. As for Peter's blood, he has become his student, which is not a big deal. The next day, the New York Temple. Cassilis, are you sure that the Supreme Sorcerer really wants to commend us in public? Lockhart looked at Cassilis in front of him. His tone was quite surprised. Early this morning, he called himself to the New York Temple and said that there was good news. Haha, Lockhart, I can still joke about this. Cassilis said excitedly, I have received the confirmed news, and this time the three of us joined forces to prevent Dormammu from coming. We are also qualified to receive public commendation from the Supreme Sorcerer. Morin on the side also added excitedly, not only will there be commendation, but it is said that the rewards in the future are also for each of us. It can be said that both honor and strength will be achieved, and we will become the topic center of Kamar-Taj for some time to come. Chapter 260, Award Ceremony, Fearless Metal, Kamar-Taj, Training Square. Normally, many mages would conduct daily combat training and magic training in the training square. But today, a large number of Kamar-Taj mages, wearing standard yellow robes, stood and stared at the high platform not far away. At the same time, at the edge of the training square, a red flame-colored circular portal would appear from time to time, and a mage would walk out of it, enter the training square, and stand with many other mages. Have you heard? Caecilius and his team have accomplished something big. The Supreme Sorcerer will come out to commend them this time. I heard that too. It is said that the Dark Believer Lawrence, who has been wanted for many years, was killed by Caecilius and his team. That's good, but it's not enough for the Supreme Sorcerer to come out to commend him. Don't listen to his nonsense. I heard that Caecilius, Morin and his team repelled the evil god. Is it true? Caecilius and his team are strong, but they can never be the opponent of the evil god. It is said that the new wizard Lockhart who joined Kamar-Taj played a huge role in it. Really? Are you familiar with this wizard Lockhart? I have heard of him, but I haven't seen him. I haven't seen him either. In the training square of Kamar-Taj, you can hear a lot of wizards whispering everywhere. Most of them are curious, praising, and surprised. After all, Kamar-Taj has protected the earth and organized the dimensional demons for thousands of years. The grievances and grudges are simply countless. Defeating the evil god, even if it is just an avatar, is enough to become the focus of the eyes of the Kamar-Taj mages, and even to be admired. Time passed by minute, and a large number of mages were teleported to Kamar-Taj one after another to participate in this commendation ceremony. After a while, as the number of mages coming was getting smaller and smaller, suddenly, ding, 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 a series of crisp bells rang out, and at the same time, a transparent ripple covered the entire Kamar-Taj, imprisoning the surrounding space. After hearing the bell and sensing the strangeness of the space, all the mages gradually stopped whispering, slowly quieted down, and looked at the high platform in the center of the training square. To be precise, there were 4 figures on the high platform. At this moment, Lockhart, wearing a yellow robe of Kamar-Taj, stood in the middle, while Caecilius and Morin stood on both sides. Not far away was the slightly old-looking Mage Bull, who stood on the high platform with a serious face and a manuscript in his hand. As if sensing the silence of the entire square, Master Bull spoke slowly, his solemn voice spreading throughout the training square. My fellow mages of Kamar-Taj, since the founding of Kamar-Taj, our purpose has been to protect the earth and resist the invasion of evil gods. And with the heroic Kamar-Taj mages fighting one after another, the greed and spying of the dimensional demons on the earth are all blocked out. Hearing Master Bull's solemn and lengthy introduction of Kamar-Taj's purpose, history, glory, etc., Lockhart felt helpless. In his previous life, he had participated in many celebrations, ceremonies, etc. But it seemed that he had not escaped the fate of the host's lengthy speeches, including the previous Hogwarts opening ceremony. It seemed that this was already a common custom in every world in the multiverse. The mages below seemed unable to stand the lengthy speeches and slowly began to discuss in a low voice. And Master Bull on the stage seemed to sense everyone's emotions and began to speak faster. Soon, hearing Master Bull's words, Lockhart, Caecilius, Morin and others were refreshed. The evil god has never given up his sights on the earth, and not long ago, Dormammu's soul descended and attempted to invade the earth. Fortunately, 3 Kamar-Taj wizards discovered it and blocked it, so the dark evil god Dormammu did not descend on the earth. They are Gilderoy Lockhart, Caecilius, and Robert Morin. It is precisely because the 3 wizards tried their best to block it that Dormammu's plan to descend was broken. Now, let us give a warm applause to the heroic actions of the 3 wizards. As he spoke, Master Bull began to applaud. The wizards below also began to applaud fiercely. Putting everything aside, every time the evil god descended in history, it was not at the expense of a large number of wizards to repel the opponent. If Dormammu really descends, these people will probably have to take on the responsibility, and their lives will be in danger at that time. Next, please invite the Supreme Wizard to come to the stage to speak, and award medals to our 3 brave wizards. After hearing the words of the Supreme Wizard, Master Bull did not need to say much, and the applause below suddenly became fierce. In Kamar-Taj, the Supreme Sorcerer is like a god. If the Supreme Sorcerer had not stopped it at many critical moments, the earth would have long been reduced to a playground for dimensional demons. As Master Bull finished speaking, the figure of the Supreme Sorcerer Ancient One appeared on the high platform. All the mages bowed slightly to show respect. Seeing everyone's performance, Ancient One waved his hand casually without saying much. In an instant, all the mages subconsciously straightened their waists. All the mages heard the Supreme Sorcerer say jokingly, "I won't say any more long-winded words. Master Bull has already said it for me. Today's protagonists should be our 3 brave wizards, not old antiques like us. So, I won't say much, just a few simple words. Kamar-Taj is committed to resisting dimensional invasions. Anyone who has contributed to this will not be forgotten by Kamar-Taj. I hope that in the future, there will be more wizards like Lockhart, Morin, and Cassilis to shoulder the heavy responsibility. Let us old bones take a break. At the end, Master Ancient One's tone was full of a smile. But for some reason, Lockhart heard a hint of expectation from it. Thinking back to the performance of the Ancient One in the original plot, he felt a little uneasy. However, as Master Ancient One's voice fell, all the wizards below, including Morin and others, applauded. When the applause became a little smaller, Master Ancient One gently snapped his fingers, and in an instant, 3 medals floated in the air. The Fearless Medal is specially awarded to those mages who have made great contributions in the invasion of the dimensional demons. This time, the 3 mages played a huge role in the invasion of Dormammu, and nipped a huge disaster in the bud. They deserve this medal. Mages who wear the Fearless Medal can borrow books from the library without restrictions, and have priority to enter the Magician's secret realm. Lockhart's heart was slightly lifted when he heard the Ancient One briefly introduce the effect of the Fearless Medal, or the privilege. Suddenly he found that with this medal, many of the difficulties he encountered before were solved. He even felt that through this awarding, he should be completely accepted by Kamar-Taj. Now, let us 3 brave mages wear our own Fearless Medals. As soon as the voice fell, Lockhart and the other 2 felt the space change, and the 3 of them came in front of the Ancient One. Then, he looked at the Fearless Medal floating in the air, and flying towards his neck. The moment he put it on, Lockhart felt a strange energy flowing from the medal into his body, and then he took the initiative to refine the magic power in his body. At the same time, the words of Master Ancient One came to his ears. After the medal ceremony, the 3 of you will come to the treasury to choose your awards. Chapter 261, Ancient Master's Advice. After the awarding ceremony, Kamar-Taj, Bronze Hall. Morin followed behind Master Bull. Looking at the bronze gate in the distance, while walking, he whispered to Lockhart beside him, "Lockhart, it is said that thousands of years of precious treasures of Kamar-Taj are stored inside. I didn't expect that one day I would have the opportunity to enter here. Have you decided what to take?" After hearing this, Lockhart shook his head and said, "I haven't decided yet. The Supreme Master said that I can only take one. Let's wait and see." "Cassilis, what about you?" Lockhart asked Cassilis beside him. "Same as you, let's wait and see." As he said, Cassilis quickened his pace with expectation, and Lockhart and Morin did the same. Soon, Master Bull brought the 3 people to the door of the bronze gate, and then said, "Inside is our Kamar-Taj's treasure house. It's not convenient for me to go in inside. You go in, someone will receive you, and the Supreme Master is also waiting for you inside." The 3 nodded one after another, and then walked towards the bronze gate. Click, click. As they approached, the bronze door seemed to sense something and slowly opened. After the 3 entered, they saw an extremely spacious hall with a staircase at the end. They could see the 2nd and 3rd floors along the staircase. In the hall in front of them, they could see boxes of various sizes, some large, some small, some long, some wide. Inside, there were all kinds of magic items, potions, and even magic books. At the same time, the 3 felt a lot of energy fluctuations. Some were as fierce as flames, some were as gentle as flowing water, and some were as empty as space. The intersection of various energy fluctuations of different attributes made the 3 feel a little pressure in their hearts while being curious. "3 wizards, you can call me Val. Now, please choose the items you want. After you choose, I will take you to see the Supreme Wizard." At some point, a wizard in a grey wizard robe stood in front of them, and said to them solemnly, "Okay, Wizard Val." The 3 said, then looked at each other, dispersed, and each chose the treasure they needed. Lockhart took a quick glance, walked to the nearest box, and looked at it silently. What came into view was a long sword and a shield. Lockhart sensed that the long sword and the shield exuded a strong breath of fire. It seemed that the previous owner was definitely a Kamar-Taj wizard or warrior who specialized in fire attributes. After walking a few more steps, Lockhart saw a dark blue ball of light emitting the breath of thunder. After a slight perception, it should be a magic weapon that amplifies the power of thunder. However, it should not be of any help to him, but with the quality of this magic item, it may be of some help to Thor. With his mind turning, Lockhart continued to move forward and observe the various magic items placed in the box. Then, Lockhart saw a spear, a staff, a robe, armor, and even a crown that exuded a lot of other attribute auras. Suddenly, Lockhart saw a red wizard cloak. If he guessed correctly, this should be the magic cloak of the future Doctor Strange. Seeing the wizard robe swaying constantly, it seemed full of spirituality, and he nodded secretly, thinking it was a good treasure. But it was not very helpful to him. Then, he continued to wander around, and met Cassilis and Morin in the middle, but both nodded, and continued to look for the magic items he wanted. It can be said that there are really many precious magic items in the treasure house, and Lockhart was dazzled by them. Unfortunately, he could only choose one. After walking around the hall, Lockhart found that there was no magic item that made him particularly excited, so he set his sights on the upstairs. He glanced at Cassilis and Morin, and found that they were still looking at various magic items. Then he went up the stairs to the second floor. Step, step, step. With the sound of light footsteps, Lockhart walked to the second floor. The second floor is somewhat similar to the hall on the first floor, but there are also many differences. The similarity is that there are a large number of boxes placed around, while the difference is that the boxes in the hall on the first floor are mostly magic items, while the second floor is books. The magic fluctuations emitted by each book are different. Some reveal the breath of light, while others are dark and evil. There are also some books that have no magic breath, but if you look at them slightly, you will feel as if someone is whispering in your ear, which makes you feel uneasy and weird. Lockhart shook his head and swept away the uneasiness in his heart. He walked forward and silently looked at the magic books floating in the box. The Dark Book of Sethaun, Imitation, Bloody Sacrifice, the Book of Demon Hunting, the Ancient, the Origin of Runes. Lockhart looked at a large number of magic books, and just the titles of the books made him feel excited. In front of him, they were either taboo books or extremely precious magic knowledge. Especially the Origin of Runes, which made Lockhart, who had been studying runes, feel excited and even thought of choosing this book. But soon, Lockhart suppressed the idea in his heart. Now I haven't finished reading all the magic books. Don't make a decision without authorization, and talk about it after reading them. Then, Lockhart walked among the boxes, looking at the magic books or items inside. Suddenly, Lockhart stopped, looked at a wine-red magic book in front of him, and frowned slightly. For some reason, he actually sensed a slight call, or resonance, from inside. And the name of this magic book is An Introduction to Chaos Magic. At this moment, suddenly, Lockhart felt someone standing behind him. He quickly turned his head, and a trace of surprise flashed in his eyes. Supreme Sorcerer, Lockhart said in surprise. Don't worry about me, continue to choose the items you want. Seeing Lockhart's surprised expression, Ancient One waved his hand. Looking at the Ancient One in front of him, Lockhart's mind was full of thoughts, and then he said tentatively, Supreme Master, there are so many items and books collected in Kamar-Taj. I'm dazzled by them. Do you have anything to recommend? Hearing Lockhart's question, the Ancient One showed a half smile on his face, was silent for a moment, and said, I see that, although your physique is average, the magic power in your body is pure, and your mental power does not look bad. However, the rune power in your body is a bit messy. There are runes, and the runes you mentioned, and even mixed with other powers. Although it looks good, it has no core. You should not have determined the direction of your next practice. Hearing what the Ancient One said, Lockhart fell silent. Indeed, he has studied a lot. He has been studying the magic system of Kamar-Taj, and the wizard magic system of the Harry Potter world has not been left behind. Runes and ancient runes are the key to the two major magic systems, and they have been studied more deeply. He also wanted to combine the two, but found that his current level of knowledge was not enough to do it. He could only continue to study, so his practice was a bit messy. With his own magic power, he went through 2 rounds of transformation. He practiced the magic of Kamar-Taj and the magic of the Harry Potter world. Whichever one is more useful, he would use it. The magic system of Kamar-Taj is overly dependent on the power of Vishanti. The advantages are obvious, but the disadvantages are more. The magic system of the Harry Potter world, although not as powerful as the magic of the Marvel world, has great potential. So his plan is to use the magic system of the Harry Potter world as the foundation, absorb the essence of the magic system of Kamar-Taj, and fill it in. Build a new magic system. But he is definitely not capable of it alone. So he just laid the most basic foundation, which is to bring out the power of meditation and runes. Later, he also hopes to use the wisdom of all wizards in the Harry Potter world to deduce it together. This is the core purpose of his promotion of the new magic system. Thinking about it, Lockhart nodded gently and said, "Indeed, Supreme Sorcerer, do you have any good suggestions?" Then Lockhart heard Ancient One speak directly. "Your magical bloodline is quite interesting. This book, An Introduction to Chaos Magic, should be helpful to you." Chapter 262. The Dragon Slayer becomes the dragon. On the eve of returning to the world of Harry Potter, Lockhart's study. On the desk in the study, there is a wine-red book with an introduction to chaos magic written on the cover, and next to it is a light blue notebook with dense text written on it. Lockhart looked at the book in front of him and frowned. As the supreme sorcerer who has been in many dimensions for thousands of years, Lockhart would naturally not ignore her advice. In the end, Lockhart chose the book An Introduction to Chaos Magic recommended by the Ancient One. Just now, he simply flipped through it to understand what the chaos magic mentioned in this book is. But he was shocked to find that the advice of the Ancient One was not without reason. The so-called chaos magic, in Lockhart's opinion, is actually similar to the magic in the Harry Potter world. The core is to emphasize that consciousness is superior to matter. The core of chaos magic is to emphasize the modification of reality through will, and the influence of the laws of the operation of things. The magic in the Harry Potter world also has a strong demand for will. Every spell requires emotions and the power of will to be successfully cast. In a sense, it is similar to a simple version of chaos magic. However, the book also mentioned that chaos magic originated from the power of the god of black magic, Sithaun. Therefore, to practice chaos magic, you must rely on the power of Sithaun. The trouble is that Vishanti, the so-called god of white magic, and Sithaun, the so-called god of black magic, are completely hostile to each other. Therefore, Kamar-Taj is in a state of comprehensive suppression of chaos magic. Many wizards have heard of chaos magic at most, but it is almost impossible to learn more about it. The library simply does not have too many introductions. Like the book An Introduction to Chaos Magic in Lockhart's hand, it is placed in the treasure house of Kamar-Taj. It is conceivable that Kamar-Taj's attitude towards chaos magic, although for some reason, there is no blatant suppression, but the suppression in all aspects is self-evident. What's more troublesome is that Lockhart now particularly doubts whether this book was written specifically for him by the Ancient One. Because in this book, the first part introduces chaos magic. The latter part seems to use chaos magic to discuss the essence of some magic systems. The magic system in the Marvel world, at least the Kamar-Taj, black magic, chaos magic, etc. that he knows, has a very obvious feature, which is to use the common saying that it is to practice with debt. Kamar-Taj uses the power of Vishanti to practice, and black magic uses the power of the dimensional demon to practice, including chaos magic. It will also rely on the power of Sithaun to practice. In this magic system, the initial strength will increase very quickly, but after reaching a bottleneck, it will be difficult to improve the strength. Because the gods as the source of power begin to restrict. After all, after the strength breaks through the bottleneck, the risk of default will increase sharply. Most gods will begin to restrict, and even some gods in the evil camp will directly start to devour the wizard, or their own believers. Prevent accidents. From the book that the Ancient One wizard pointed out, Lockhart knew that when reaching the bottleneck, as a wizard, the direction of breakthrough is either to kill the gods who are the source of power through other means, replace them, and become the new source of power. Or, it is to plunder a dimension, like Dormammu. From a black wizard, if he is lucky enough to merge the origin of the latitude, and become the master of a dimension, he can also become a new source of power. As for the Supreme Sorcerer Ancient One, how did she break through the bottleneck? Just listen to how Dormammu scolded her, and you will know. Isn't it just plundering the origin of many dimensions? Otherwise, how did the Supreme Sorcerer get such a bad reputation? No, reputation among many dimensions. After Lockhart learned about this magic system from the book, he felt that it was a bit deformed. The inexplicable feeling is a bit like the feeling of fast-growing chickens in the previous life. Fattened quickly and then fried in a pan. Only a very few geniuses or very lucky people can break through the constraints of such a magic system. But even if they succeed in breaking through the constraints, they will just copy what they have experienced before to other people. Continue to cultivate believers or mages. At most, just like Vishanti, do it decently, wait to die of old age or die in battle before harvesting. But after all, such behavior is like the dragon slayer eventually becomes the dragon. Perhaps this is why the Ancient One did not choose to become the master of the dimension. Lockhart thought silently. Otherwise, with the strength of the Ancient One, it would be easy to kill a certain dimension demon and occupy a dimension. But what does the Ancient One mean by showing him this book? Could it be that he wants to fight with Sithan in the future and snatch the source of his chaos magic? Or, a thought emerged in Lockhart's mind, and he shuddered suddenly. He is not ready to be an enemy of all the gods in the Marvel world in the multiverse. Kamar-Taj, Bamboo Forest Tea House. The Supreme Sorcerer Ancient One sat alone at the tea table, silently pouring himself a cup of tea. Then he slowly tasted it. At the same time, the eye of Agamotto hanging on his chest opened, revealing a time gem that looked like an emerald. While the Ancient One was sipping tea, the time gem on his chest kept spinning, as if he was watching something. Faintly, it seemed that various constantly changing pictures could be seen in the Ancient One's eyes, as if it was an exploration of the future, or an observation of the multiverse. After a moment, "Hey." Ancient One sighed lightly, but in this sigh, there seemed to be a hint of surprise and expectation. Sure enough, the future of this Master Lockhart is still unclear. Even the multiverse does not have the figure of Master Lockhart, as if he still retains complete uniqueness. You know, according to the law of the multiverse, even if it comes from an unknown place, as long as it has a soul, when the other party descends into any universe, the multiverse will automatically open up the corresponding timeline. Many universes will have projections of the other party. As time goes by, it will be completely integrated into the multiverse, and its soul, true spirit, destiny, etc. will stabilize and completely lose its uniqueness. This is the capacity or horror of the multiverse. Just like her Ancient One, she can be seen in many universes. She wants to condense into uniqueness again and break through the multiverse realm, but she has to ask other Ancient Ones if they agree. I hope that this Master Lockhart can bring her some surprises. At night, in the study, Lockhart carried a magic suitcase in his hand and silently looked at the countdown of the world shuttle on the system page. This time, he did not choose to travel through the Kamar-Taj library. Because of the existence of the Fearless Medal, he can borrow a large number of books at will. So, prepare in advance. Now wait. Return to the Harry Potter world again. Search for the solidified world shuttle channel. Search successful. Teleport. Transporting. Welcome the host back to the Harry Potter world. Warning. After staying in this world for 30 days, the soul will gradually be branded with the mark of this world. You need to leave this world in time to avoid being infected by the world's breath. P.S. I ask all the big guys, if you have extra votes, give some to Xingqian. The monthly votes are almost full of 200, and I will add more when the time comes. Chapter 263 Return to the Harry Potter world. Harry Potter world. At night, Hogwarts. Defense against the Dark Arts office. On the ceiling of the office, there is a ball of light emitting soft white light, which keeps the whole office bright. At this moment, a faint light flashes, and a figure carrying a suitcase quietly emerges. It is Gilderoy Lockhart, the professor of defense against the dark arts at Hogwarts. At this moment, Lockhart looks around and finds that nothing has changed. Even the freshly brewed tea still emits the same heat. With his mind turning, Lockhart extends his wand and draws a light outline, and a round portal of red flame quietly emerges. He strides in, and the portal disappears at the same time. At the same time, in Lockhart's study in Hogsmeade, Lockhart's figure emerges. Seeing the dark study, Lockhart extends his magic wand and taps it lightly, and a ball of light emitting soft white light emerges and floats to the ceiling. The next moment, Lockhart puts down the suitcase in his hand, waves his wand, and the suitcase opens automatically. Then, Ian, Peggy Carter and others walked out one after another with the gold coins that had been prepared. "I'm back." This was Ian's somewhat excited words. He was looking forward to returning to the Wizarding World. He still had some things to do, such as revenge for his parents. "Why do I feel so awkward?" Bruno muttered carefully. The rules of the Marvel world were relatively loose, and the release of magic, including alchemy, was smoother than usual. In comparison, the Wizarding World was obviously suppressed. Just coming back was like entering a low oxygen area from an oxygen rich area, which was indeed a bit awkward. "This is the Wizarding World." Peggy Carter looked around. After signing the contract, although her lifespan was effectively extended, and she began to have magical abilities, the price was obvious. She had to work for Lockhart and use her rich organizational experience and agent experience to cooperate with him to complete various aspects of the Wizarding World's new magic system promotion plan. "Everyone, welcome back to the Wizarding World." Lockhart raised the corners of his mouth to the people with different expressions. Then, he nodded gently to Ian and the other two. He said in a deep voice, "Ian, Vera, Remy, when you go back, pass on the knowledge and experience you have gained during this period to your classmates. Later, you will all fight side by side." Then, he instructed Bruno, "Bruno, when you go back, in addition to obtaining intelligence, don't delay the things at Gringotts. Your mission is very important." "Okay, Master." Bruno nodded heavily. Seeing this, Lockhart stretched out his wand and swiped it slightly. 2 round portals of red flame opened. Ian, the other two and Bruno saw the familiar environment and left directly. Finally, Lockhart set his sights on Peggy Carter, who was standing aside. Carter's mission was very important. Thinking about it, Lockhart stretched out his wand again and hooked a round portal of red flame. Opposite the portal, "This is a Damali." Lockhart waved to Carter and stepped in. Seeing this, Carter followed closely behind, and the two entered the Damali together. At night, London, an alley. The weather in London is relatively humid most of the year, and it is more cool at night. Trample, trample, trample. There were light footsteps in a dark alley. Soon, a handsome blonde man in a grey windbreaker walked out slowly. Next to him was a tall and delicate beauty in light blue clothes. Her short wavy hair made her exude a capable temperament. The pedestrians on the street saw a man and a woman walking out of the alley, and a hint of smirk flashed in their eyes. A handsome man and a beautiful woman are both killer looks. At this moment, Lockhart walked forward along the street and joked to Carter next to him. "Carter, this is also considered a return to your hometown. I remember you also came from England before." Carter walked and looked around the layout of the surroundings. Seeing the slightly familiar buildings, a hint of surprise flashed in his eyes. All that was heard was Lockhart saying slowly, "This world is also called Earth. You've heard of the multiverse theory?" Carter nodded, and Lockhart continued, "You can think of it as a parallel world. There was World War II, the United Nations, and the United States was also there. The historical development context is roughly similar, but the specific people and things are different. For example, the president, prime minister, and various officials are mostly different. I told you before, there is no SHIELD here, and no messy supernatural powers. But there is magic here, there are wizards, and all kinds of magical items." Hearing this, Carter nodded slightly to show that he understood. "You must wear the necklace I gave you," Lockhart said calmly. "The Ministry of Magic monitors the entire London from time to time. If there is any abnormal fluctuation of magic power, it is very likely to be detected. You are also a wizard now. Although the necklace can conceal magic power, you should be careful when casting and practicing magic. Don't make too much noise. If you encounter a problem that you can't solve, just call me. Don't worry, Professor Lockhart." Carter said calmly, "Even if you don't cast magic, the task you mentioned is easy for me." Although the tone is calm, Lockhart can still hear a sense of confidence or pride in Carter's tone. But Lockhart still reminded, "Don't underestimate the Muggle world, because I suspect that the top nobles and capital forces in London are likely to have practice with the Wizarding world. For wizards, it is easy to obtain intelligence, whether it is magic or potions. You should pay more attention to it in normal times." "Okay, I understand." Carter nodded calmly, and her heart became more cautious. Magic is an unscientific thing. She has only been exposed to it for a short time. Who knows what problems will arise? Carter, we are here. After walking for a while, Lockhart pointed to a skyscraper not far ahead. It was written on it, the Shard. The Shard is one of the 3 iconic buildings in London. With a floor height of more than 300 meters, it is the tallest building in London. Looking at the skyscraper in front of him, Lockhart stretched out his wand and tapped the 2 of them lightly. A transparent ripple enveloped the 2 of them. Then let's go, Carter. Lockhart walked forward. First, confirm your identity and try not to have any flaws later. Details are very important. There is a white devil in the wizarding world. He is very observant and very good at starting from details. Carter nodded and followed behind. Although he was a little curious about who the white devil was, he did not ask any more. Soon, the 2 walked into the lobby. Although it was also night, there were also some people on duty in the lobby. However, they turned a blind eye to Lockhart and Carter, who were walking towards them, as if they had not seen them at all. Then, Lockhart walked to the elevator and pressed it lightly. After a moment, the elevator door opened. After Lockhart took Carter into the elevator, they moved directly to the rooftop. On the rooftop, Lockhart stood on the edge, overlooking the entire night view of London. Looking at the brightly lit London, the corners of his mouth curled up. Carter, who was standing next to him, looked at the unfamiliar yet familiar London with a dazed look in her eyes. When she was young, she had always lived in London, but she never expected that one day she would be able to reach such a seemingly unreal place. After a while, Carter heard Lockhart's words next to her. Carter, do you know how terrible the power of a top wizard is? When Carter was thinking about what Lockhart meant, he heard Lockhart continue. Get ready to welcome your new identity in London. My Miss Peggy Carter. As soon as the voice fell, Carter saw Lockhart waving his wand and outlining an extremely complex grey rune pattern in the air. The next moment, as if sensing something, dark clouds began to gather above the sky and became larger and larger. The grey runes began to spread and gradually sank into the dark clouds on the horizon. Then, tick, tick, tick. Accompanied by a large number of raindrops, a heavy rain fell, covering a radius of 100 miles, and the dark clouds were moving slowly, as if they wanted the whole of London to enjoy this heavy rain. The people below raised their umbrellas and complained about the rainy weather in London, but did not say much. Seeing this scene, Carter on the side was a little surprised. It seemed that he did not expect that Lockhart's magic could actually change the weather in London. Then Professor Lockhart's voice came to my ears. Miss Peggy Carter, tomorrow, everyone in London will not have any doubts about your existence. You are the only heir to the Carter family, with a prominent London aristocratic status and enjoy many privileges. P.S. Return to the world of Harry Potter. If you have anything you want to see, please feel free to discuss. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 264, Dumbledore's Abnormal Attitude. The next morning, London, Carter Manor. Peggy Carter opened her gem-like brown eyes and felt the fluffy texture of the bed under her. She stood up, got off the big bed, and walked towards the bedroom door. Click. Carter pushed open the door, and what came into view was the female employee who was cleaning, and the housekeeper who was directing everyone to work. Miss Carter, you are up. What do you want to eat for breakfast? Is it the same as before? I'll ask the kitchen to make it. The housekeeper's gentle and heavy British accent came to her ears, and Carter nodded calmly and said, the same as before. Okay, Miss Carter. With that, the housekeeper turned and left, preparing to ask the kitchen to make breakfast for Miss Peggy Carter, the heir of the Carter family in his mind. Carter continued to wander around the villa, and all the employees in the middle greeted her respectfully after seeing her. Seeing everyone's undoubted respect, it seemed that Carter had lived in this manor for many years. Although Peggy Carter looked very calm, she was still shocked in her heart. This is the power of the top wizards. One magic can distort the minds and memories of most people in London. Carter recalled what Professor Lockhart said to her last night. Carter, after tonight, in everyone's memory and cognition, you are the only heir left in the Carter family. Your parents passed away recently, and you have obtained the status of a fallen noble, with a ticket to the upper class of the Muggle world. Gossip can make gold melt. Even if someone doubts, in the end they will only think that their memory is wrong. As for the subtle problems left, it depends on your ability. I have confidence in you. Carter began to recall the memories in his mind. The Carter family was once prominent in ancient times, but in modern times, especially after the war, it has become lonely. The whole family's way of doing things tends to be hidden from the world, and its influence is average. And the identity she replaced is not well known because of the loneliness of the family. It is considered a very high quality identity. Thoughts were turning in the brain, and suddenly, the voice of the butler came to my ears. "Miss, breakfast is ready. Please go to the restaurant to enjoy it." "Okay, Charles," Carter said to Charles's housekeeper. "By the way, please help me make an appointment with Director John in the morning. I want to know what businesses the family is currently running." "Okay, Miss Carter, I'll arrange the time." Charles was a little surprised by Carter's request, but the other party was the only heir to the Carter family. He had no reason to refuse. What's more, he has always been loyal to the Carter family. Peggy Carter was the one he watched grow up. It was normal for her to take over the family after the death of the Lady and Master. At this moment, Carter has slowly walked to the restaurant and looked at the extremely rich breakfast. Although he knew that the London nobles have always been luxurious, Carter still cursed in his heart, luxury. Finally, he enjoyed his breakfast very happily. After eating, he could deal with those old foxes in the family business. She needed to integrate resources to gain a foothold in the London noble circle. Only then could she get the information and resources she wanted. At the same time, Hogwarts, Defense Against the Dark Arts Office. Lockhart sat at the desk, waving a feather pen, constantly improving today's open class lesson plan. Now, he dare not say that all his subordinates are elite soldiers, but at least, he knows the abilities of Ian, Carter and others, and they are more than enough to complete the tasks assigned by him. Especially Carter, as the founder of the world's top spy organization SHIELD, he is top notch in both ability and experience. However, the top circles in London, especially the aristocratic circles, are not fools. They are rich, powerful and influential. If there is any doubt, it is difficult for Carter alone to be perfect. Therefore, in order to ensure the success of the infiltration, Carter can enter the top circles in London steadily. Last night, he specifically targeted the whole of London and cast a large-scale mind magic mind rain. The most powerful effect of this magic is that it can be transmitted from person to person like a virus. Under Lockhart's control, a person's cognition is distorted, and his friends and family who come into contact with him will also have similar changes. In this way, in a very short period of time, everyone can instinctively think that Peggy Carter is the only heir to the Carter family, and there will be no doubt. Even if there are wizards to investigate, nothing unusual will happen, and even wizards will be affected by it. As time goes by, this cognition will only become more and more stable. It lays the most solid foundation for Carter to integrate into the top circles in London, coupled with Carter's own experience and ability. Lockhart is full of confidence in this. He is very curious about the connection between the top circles in the Muggle world and wizards. Especially when he saw the magic firearms made by goblins in Gringotts before there were no muggles involved. Lockhart doesn't believe it. With his mind turning, Lockhart began to continue writing lesson plans. As the founder of meditation, Lockhart will hold an open class on meditation at Hogwarts. Students of Hogwarts, assistants in the research of squibs, will come, including professors such as Dumbledore and Snape. At the same time, some pureblood families, including newspaper reporters, will also participate. It can be said that this is the first step in promoting the new magic system, which is very important. Hogwarts, the principal's office. Dumbledore, wearing crescent-shaped glasses, looked at Professor McGonagall, who had a serious face, and asked gently, "Minerva, what's the matter?" Professor McGonagall said with some worry, "Albus, the school board has been a little restless recently. They said that they recruited Lockhart to teach the young wizards. But the reality is that Lockhart is using his time at Hogwarts to study his meditation method. I think they are still obsessed with the ownership of the meditation method, or they want to expel Lockhart from Hogwarts. They even started to use the college funds provided next year as an excuse. Albus, what do you think? Ever since Lockhart promised to provide Hogwarts with a certain amount of gold galleons every year, McGonagall's favorability towards Lockhart began to rise. After all, Lockhart is now considered a wealthy man in the school. What's more, the results of Lockhart's research are indeed epoch-making in McGonagall's view. As a student who graduated from Hogwarts, McGonagall is proud of Lockhart. The only regret was that the other party was a student from Ravenclaw, not Gryffindor. However, Dumbledore's demeanor made McGonagall a little confused. Dumbledore did not support Lockhart without hesitation as usual. Instead, he was silent for a moment, then slowly said, "I'll think about this matter first. Let's talk about it after Lockhart's public class is over." Chapter 265 Open Class and Rich Professor. Hogwarts, Great Hall. Lockhart's open class on meditation had been announced 3 days ago. In addition to Lockhart's assistant in researching the squibs, a large number of young wizards also signed up. Even reporters from various daily newspapers outside wanted to participate in this course through connections. Because this should be the first time that the secret of meditation has been officially revealed. Before, it was just to highlight the existence of meditation. When Lockhart knew the number of people participating in the open class, he immediately discussed with Professor McGonagall to borrow the Great Hall. Because the space in the Great Hall is spacious enough to accommodate more participants. At this moment, the Great Hall, looking down from the sky, was like ants, with a large number of people crowded together, and the sound was a bit noisy. Sitting in the front were the professors of Hogwarts and some visitors from pure-blood families. Behind them were Lockhart's assistants in researching the squibs. They all sat on a stool, and communicated with their companions around them with great expectation. Most of the people in the middle were the little wizards of Hogwarts. The little wizards who had mastered the transfiguration spell waved their wands to create a small stool for themselves. The little wizards in the first grade, who had not yet mastered the transfiguration spell, sat on the small stools they brought. At the same time, they looked back from time to time. Because there were many adult wizards holding cameras in the back, accompanied by occasional clicks and flashes of white light, it made them feel very interesting. The whole hall was very noisy, because many wizards were whispering. Harry Potter and his good friends Hermione and Ron sat in the front middle, and communicated with each other excitedly. There are so many people here today. It seems that Professor Lockhart's class is very attractive. Harry couldn't help but sigh. Harry, this is normal. Hermione analyzed on the side. Now the whole wizarding world is praising Professor Lockhart's research results for their epoch-making significance. It is normal to attract so many people to participate. I really hope that I can stand on the stage like Professor Lockhart in the future, with a large number of wizards calling for me below, Ron said with some envy. After hearing this, Hermione rolled her eyes at Ron and said, Professor Lockhart is a well-known academic master in Ravenclaw College. He got an A in every course when he graduated. Now, you should consider the homework assigned by Professor Snape first. After hearing Hermione's blow, Ron flattered shamelessly, Hermione, lend me your homework. I'll learn from it. I don't want to be scolded by the big bat again. After hearing this, Harry, who was on the side, also looked at Hermione with expectation. This made Hermione a little speechless. Suddenly Professor Lockhart is here. The sharp-eyed Hermione suddenly found that a figure appeared on the high platform. It was Gilderoy Lockhart. He said to Harry and Ron with a little excitement, the course is about to begin. This is a groundbreaking research result. The two also looked towards the stage excitedly. Although they had learned about the meditation method in advance and even started practicing. But seeing so many people come to class, they felt proud. At this moment, Lockhart looked at Headmaster Dumbledore and Professor Snape, Flitwick and others in the front and nodded slightly. Then, he passed the pureblood family on the side and looked at the dense crowd behind. Cough. Lockhart stretched out his wand against his throat and cast a silent amplification spell. With a light cough, the whole auditorium quickly quieted down. Seeing that all the wizards and squibs had quieted down and looked at him expectantly, Lockhart raised the corner of his mouth and then spoke. His tone was gentle and steady so that everyone could hear clearly. Welcome everyone to my first open class on meditation. I don't think I need to introduce myself. Everyone here should know me more or less. At Hogwarts, I heard many little wizards give me an interesting title called Rich Professor. Hearing this, the little wizards present laughed. The term Rich Professor was widely circulated among them because Professor Lockhart, in the eyes of these little wizards, was a real rich man. As long as they performed well, they would be rewarded with all kinds of magic snacks and even magic items. He was even richer than a rich man. Hearing the laughter of the little wizards, Lockhart smiled and said, "Rich Professor, this name sounds friendly. The source of this title is not only that I have money, but more importantly, I'm good at sharing. If I only had money and didn't know how to share, I'm afraid my title would become the Miser Professor." Hearing Lockhart's joke, the little wizards present laughed, and the whole atmosphere became more lively. After a while, when the laughter subsided a little, Lockhart continued, "I like to share. I shared my experiences in books before, which were loved by everyone, and gained a certain amount of fame and money. Here, I'm very grateful for your support. So, when my research results are formed, I will also think about sharing them with everyone at the first time. I always think that the more you share, the more you gain. When I share a piece of knowledge with a wizard, after learning it, we will get 2 pieces of knowledge. After we communicate, the 3rd piece of knowledge will also be born. This is the greatness of sharing. Sharing promotes the development of knowledge and the progress of civilization. So, there is today's open class to share my first research result, meditation." Hearing this, a large number of young wizards applauded. Although they did not understand, they felt it was impressive. Well, it feels very grand, which is the key. In addition, what Professor Lockhart said before was very interesting, so they applauded. The Hogwarts professors sitting in the front row also clapped their hands gently, and there seemed to be a hint of admiration in their eyes. Lockhart's sharing concept seemed to have brought them a certain impact. You know, in the current wizarding world, cherishing one's own knowledge is still popular. The advanced magic mastered by pureblood families is basically not leaked. Even if it is passed on to someone, a strict contract must be signed. As for the articles shared in various journals, most of them seem important, but they do not involve the core. In fact, if it is not for more reputation and interests, most wizards will not choose to make their research results public. Even in Lockhart's previous life, this phenomenon still exists, as if it is rooted in a person's bad nature. But those who really make top achievements are often those who dare to share. As for whether Lockhart said it verbally, they don't know. But they know that Lockhart is now sharing his research results for free, which is almost the same as what he just said. Naturally, it will arouse their admiration. At the same time, Dumbledore, who was sitting in front, looked at Lockhart with a softer look. There should be a difference between the pursuit of knowledge and the pursuit of rights, right? Thanks to Silent Xiaoxing for the 100-point reward. Thanks to Silent Xiaoxing, Book Friend 202103011041319452006, and Kayan to Faction for the monthly vote. Chapter 266. Come with me and change the world. What is meditation? Before answering this question, I would like to ask the wizards present, what is the most basic element in casting a spell? Lockhart stood on the podium and asked the people below. Swish, swish, swish. Soon, a group of little wizards raised their hands. Seeing this, Lockhart called them directly and said, "Hermione, you speak." After hearing this, Hermione stood up quickly, recalled the information in the textbook, and said loudly, "Professor, according to the 3D principles of casting spells, they are goal, determination, and calmness. To cast a spell, 4 basic actions need to be met: specific wand movements, correct spells, the caster's subjective awareness of the spell effect, and a certain degree of concentration." Hearing Hermione's answer, Lockhart nodded slightly and praised. Hermione's answer is correct. Gryffindor plus 10 points. As soon as Lockhart finished speaking, the little lions of Gryffindor applauded. When the applause died down a little, Lockhart continued to speak. These views are clearly written in our textbooks, and they are also the consensus of all wizards for thousands of years. But When he mentioned but, Lockhart changed the subject and said calmly, if we dig deeper, we will find a very obvious fact that we have overlooked. The most basic element of magic are spells, magic power, and mental power. At this point, Lockhart paused slightly, waved his wand, and these three words appeared in the air. Looking at everyone's serious reaction, he continued, magic power gives us the foundation for casting spells. Spells allow us to open the door to magic, and mental power allows us to have the possibility of successful casting. The role of meditation is to give us the foundation for casting spells and increase the probability of casting spells. This is meditation, a method that can allow all squib wizards to improve their magic power and mental power. Clap, clap, clap. After Lockhart finished speaking, the little wizards below applauded. Then, when the applause got a little louder, Lockhart continued to preach. How does meditation improve magic and mental strength? First, we must first understand the magic element or energy particles, which are all around us. Runes are a very special rune, which resonates highly with energy particles and mental strength. When we meditate on runes, we can not only absorb energy particles and transform them into magic, but also use the power of runes and magic to nourish, improve, and change mental strength. When Lockhart carefully explained the principles of meditation, he waved his wand from time to time, outlining one after another in the air in different colors, runes. At the same time, in order to facilitate everyone's further understanding, he waved his wand and constructed various reactions when wizards meditated. The professors and pureblood families sitting in the front listened with relish and nodded from time to time. The young wizards in the front were also listening attentively. Most of the wizards in the middle were probably younger and unstable, and they had already started to communicate in a low voice. And the group of reporters in the back kept pressing the shutter of the camera. With the sound of clicking, white light continued to flash, photographing Lockhart's figure lecturing. They all knew. Tomorrow and for the next period of time, Professor Lockhart will be the center of attention. The more photos taken, the better. Lockhart looked at the reactions of the crowd below, nodded slightly, and began to gradually mix in some personal opinions. What I just shared with you is the most basic meditation method I have researched, also known as the 9-element meditation method, which is composed of the most basic 9 runes. However, I think that meditation methods in the future should be diverse, not only with high and low quality, but also with their own special effects. For example, a meditation method that tends to be fire-based will have a certain increase in the casting of fire spells, and there will even be exclusive spells that match the meditation method. At this point, Lockhart paused, looking at the focused eyes of many wizards below, and his tone began to become passionate. Think about it, in the future, when we meditate and reach a certain level, we can cast spells naturally, even silently and without a wand, just like the innate magic of magical creatures. For us wizards, this will be a milestone. I believe that the emergence of meditation is no less than when we wizards invented the magic wand. Like the magic wand, it will change our casting concepts and habits. The emergence of the magic wand allows more wizards to master magic efficiently and quickly. And the emergence of meditation will not only further improve the efficiency of controlling magic, but more importantly, it will increase the number of our wizards, enhance the potential and power of the entire wizarding world. After he finished speaking, Lockhart changed the subject and his tone became a little serious. I believe that many forward-looking wizards should have discovered that the current wizarding world has become somewhat rigid over the past few hundred years, and the probability of well-known research results appearing is getting less and less. Hundreds of years ago, we can recall many famous wizards and the major research results they brought one after another. For example, the potion fusion concept brought by Berisort, the new spell fighting method created by Rory Zimmerman, the spellmaster, etc. The inventions left by these masters, we are still using them now. But now, especially in the past 100 years, how many inventions have affected our daily life and the way of casting spells? Unfortunately, there are very few. Hearing what Lockhart said, the pureblood families and professors sitting in front fell into deep thought. Because they found that there was nothing wrong with what Lockhart said. Especially in the past 100 years, the continuous appearance of 2 Dark Lords has dealt a heavy blow to the entire wizarding world, especially the British wizard world where they are At this time, Lockhart also cooperated very well and paused to let them think for themselves. After a moment, he said in a tempting tone, "I believe that the emergence of meditation will inject a new source of energy into the increasingly rigid wizarding world. The current meditation method is still in its infancy and needs more irrigation and careful cultivation. Here, I call on all wizards in the entire wizarding world. Come on, join me in the research of meditation. Let us leave our own mark in the history of the wizarding world like those famous wizards in history. Let us change the wizarding world together. Let wizards be great again." Chapter 267. Principal Dumbledore, let's join forces. Hogwarts, the Hog's Head. Make wizards great again. That sounds good. I was a little excited when I heard it for the first time. But is meditation really that magical? I heard that it seems to be a little useful for squibs, but not much help for us. At a table on the right, a middle-aged wizard took a sip of wine, waved the Prophet newspaper in his hand, and said to his friend across from him, "Who knows? The newspaper is still very amazing, but my child is a wizard, so he doesn't need the so-called meditation method." The wizard across from him also responded loudly, and when he mentioned his child, his tone was mixed with a hint of pride. "But for the squibs, it is an opportunity, and it makes these squibs lucky." The middle-aged wizard said with some regret, "It's a pity that wizards will probably have to do those chores in the future." Not far from these wizards, in the corner on the other side of the bar, a white-haired old man and a handsome blonde man sat together. They were Dumbledore and Lockhart. "Lockhart, it seems that ordinary wizards don't have much reaction to your research." Dumbledore raised the butterbeer on the table and joked to Lockhart. "Haha, this is normal, headmaster." Lockhart also replied with a smile, "No matter when or where, most people will only pay close attention to their own interests. My research is currently very helpful for squibs. It's okay for young wizards, but for most ordinary wizards, the current meditation method can't help them too much. But later, I will definitely study meditation methods that can also work for adult wizards." Hearing this, Dumbledore nodded. Lockhart raised the butterbeer in front of him and took a sip out of curiosity. He prefers to drink tea because tea can keep people's mind clear and their brains awake. However, when he really needs to drink, he will not refuse. After all, in many cases, alcohol plays a role of a catalyst. Some transactions and some cooperation still need the help of alcohol. However, after drinking the butterbeer in front of him, Lockhart felt that it was different from what he imagined. The alcohol was very light and not intoxicating. It felt more like a bottle of beverage. No wonder many young wizards like to drink butterbeer. Well, this is good. I can bring it to the Universal Book Cafe as a specialty in the future. While Lockhart was thinking, suddenly Lockhart, I heard Minerva mentioned that you want to provide a certain amount of gold galleons to Hogwarts every year in the future. You want to exchange for the opportunity to become an honorary member of the Hogwarts Board of Directors, right? Hearing Dumbledore's question, Lockhart nodded and asked with some expectation, "Principal, is this identity okay?" "Of course." Dumbledore nodded slowly and said, "Hogwarts' future development requires more funds. Especially if we recruit squibs as students in the future, the amount of funds required will be even greater." But, hearing the but from Dumbledore, Lockhart, who had originally shown a happy expression, felt his heart sink. "I don't know if Minerva has mentioned to you that the members of the school board have been taking a lot of actions against you recently." "I know this." Lockhart nodded gently and said, "That's why I want to be a member of the school board. In this way, they won't be able to find excuses to interfere with my research later." At this point, Lockhart's tone was full of hostility, as if he was confiding in Dumbledore. "If this group of pureblood families get the meditation method that I worked so hard to research, I can imagine that they will definitely try every means to hide the meditation method in the future and only circulate it among their own families. For ordinary squibs, it is probably impossible to get the meditation method without signing a strict contract. Don't you think so, Headmaster?" Hearing what Lockhart said, Dumbledore remained silent and did not give a clear answer. He still knew what kind of people the pureblood families were. It was precisely because of this understanding that he was worried that the contradictions between Lockhart and the pureblood families would intensify. What kind of consequences would that have? He felt a headache just thinking about it. The pureblood families have a deep foundation, and there are many old monsters behind them. Lockhart is not bad either. His talent can be said to be top-notch, coupled with his firm, even stubborn character, and idealistic goals. What kind of trouble will happen in the end? He has witnessed with his own eyes how two extremely talented wizards step by step embark on the path of the Dark Lord. If he sees his student become the third generation of the Dark Lord, his blood pressure will probably go up all of a sudden. Fortunately, the student in front of him has not shown any signs of a dark wizard and still retains his enthusiasm for knowledge and research. If he really becomes a dark wizard and embarks on the path of the Dark Lord, he doesn't know whether he should take the initiative to completely eliminate the hidden dangers for the British wizard world. After all, the current wizard world can't stand repeated tossing. He is old, and now he just wants to solve Tom's affairs and keep the original peace and order in the wizard world. At this moment, Lockhart was a little disappointed to see Dumbledore silent. If Dumbledore agrees to stand on his side and resist the pureblood family, the pressure of his plan will be at least reduced by half. Then Lockhart, can you talk about your future goals? What do you want to do in the future? Dumbledore's sudden question made Lockhart stunned for a moment. He had a lot of plans for the future. If he really told them, Dumbledore might challenge him to a duel. Then he would be a muggle. However, this was also an opportunity. With his mind turning, Lockhart said as if jokingly, "Principal, my goal is a bit idealistic. No matter what you say. I like reading books, whether it is books about the wizarding world or books about the muggle world. I have read them and learned a lot of knowledge from them. Principal, you may not know that the muggle world is developing faster and faster. As long as you understand it in depth, you will be surprised by muggles. In comparison, our wizarding world is still a bit rigid, and even in some places, it is even more backward than muggles." Oh. After hearing this, Dumbledore's eyes flashed with surprise, as if what Lockhart said was a bit unexpected to him. What does this have to do with muggles? However, he still continued to listen patiently. Lockhart continued to deceive. "Principal, I once experienced a muggle war when I was adventuring. You may not imagine that there is a kind of machine gun and rocket launcher in the muggle world, which is quite powerful. It only takes a muggle who has undergone simple training, holding these weapons, and choosing the right way, to easily kill an adult wizard. At that time, I was thinking that the wizarding world should also make progress. At least, it should not lag behind the muggles. Aren't you right, Principal?" Hearing what Lockhart said, Dumbledore nodded slightly. He agreed with this point. He understood that falling behind would lead to being beaten. After seeing Dumbledore nod, Lockhart said excitedly, "I think meditation is the key to making the wizarding world progress. Principal, you and I have studied it together before. You should know the potential of meditation. It can completely promote the further development of the wizarding world's magic system. Let the entire wizarding world usher in new changes. Principal, let's join forces. I believe that we can definitely make wizard civilization more prosperous." Chapter 268 Grindelwald's Prophecy. Lockhart's request made Dumbledore feel a little dazed. Just like many years ago, Jetler wanted to join forces with him, also for the sake of wizards. And now hearing the same request again, it still pulled Dumbledore back to his past memories. Thoughts turned in his brain. Dumbledore fell into silence, but Lockhart waited patiently for Dumbledore's reply. Whether Dumbledore agreed or refused, he could accept it. He was even ready for Dumbledore to refuse. However, a moment later, "Lockhart, since it is beneficial to the development of wizards, I think I have no reason to refuse." Dumbledore showed Lockhart a gentle smile, nodded slowly, and agreed. "Really? Principal?" After hearing this, Lockhart's face flashed with a trace of astonishment, and he subconsciously asked back. He was ready for Dumbledore to refuse. "Of course, Lockhart." Dumbledore stroked his beard and said kindly, "Just as the Daily Prophet said, meditation is an epoch-making miracle. I have no reason to let such a miracle disappear." Lockhart's words reminded him of his good friend, Getter Grindelwald. They both had talents superior to ordinary people, similar ideals, and even made the same request to him. The only difference was that he was old now, but at the same time, this time, he was not bound by the blood oath, nor was there any emotional grudge. Because of the blood oath, he could not do anything to get her, and because of his sister's accidental death, the relationship between the two became extremely complicated. Then, he could only watch him become an enemy of the whole world step by step, and finally, but this time, he didn't have so many constraints. Lockhart was his favorite student, and meditation was also the most promising research result he had seen in recent years, enough to change the world. Although it was still immature, as the Daily Prophet said, it was an epoch-making miracle. He couldn't see such a miracle disappear. But at the same time, he couldn't watch his students step by step, and the contradictions with the pure blood family intensified, and finally stepped into the path he didn't want to see. Since we can't stop the promotion of meditation, then join it. But I hope it can be done in a more peaceful way. Dumbledore thought silently in his heart. At this moment, Lockhart was as happy as if pie had fallen from the sky. With Dumbledore's joining, he didn't know how many problems would be solved at once. For example, Dumbledore could directly resist the pressure from the board of directors. In addition, with Dumbledore's status, as long as he is willing to speak, I believe that the top magic journals in Europe will have an objective attitude towards it. When he was thinking about how to solve a series of problems through Dumbledore, suddenly, Lockhart, I will discuss your honorary board member status with them when I go back. However, you said before that you had experienced a war with muggles. Can you tell me about your experience in the muggle world? Dumbledore's answer surprised Lockhart, but also surprised him. The surprise was that the honorary board member status should not be lost. However, the surprise was that why Dumbledore was curious about the muggle world. At this moment, Lockhart's brain was thinking frantically. Could it be that Dumbledore agreed to join because of the threat from the muggle world? It is also possible that according to the development of the muggle world, it will not take many years for the wizard world to hide any longer. As the White Lord of the wizard world, it is normal for him to be prepared for danger in times of peace. In this case, it is time to put more pressure on him. Stand in line, the more stable the better. Seeing Dumbledore's gaze, Lockhart organized his words in his brain and started to deceive, threaten, principle. When I was exploring before, I once stayed in a muggle's house for a while. It just so happened that the other party was a technology expert in the muggle world, just like the potion masters and alchemy masters in our wizarding world. When I was chatting with him, he talked to me about his research and the research in their circle. After listening, I was actually shocked in my heart, as if a new world had opened up. It has to be said that the muggles that we have ignored have mastered a power that is no less than magic, and this power is called technology. For example, the other party has developed a thing called the internet. Even if it is thousands of miles away, information can be transmitted by just typing on the keyboard. It is said that in the future it can transmit pictures and images, and even face-to-face real-time communication can be achieved, like our two-way mirror. At the time, I was thinking, if this technology is really realized in the future, will the confidentiality law really work? Also, it is said that those large muggle countries have already launched satellites in outer space, in the distant starry sky. This is a field that we have never touched, but the muggles have already reached out to touch it. Also, according to my friend's chat, they are researching some space-based weapons that can be launched directly from the starry sky. With just a light blow, an island can be destroyed in a very short time. Also, Dumbledore's face became serious when he heard what Lockhart said. Originally, he just wanted to know whether Lockhart had changed because of the muggles. But he didn't expect that there would be so many changes after not paying attention to the muggle world for so many years. It seems that he should pay more attention to the muggle world in the future. Afterwards, Dumbledore silently memorized what Lockhart said and prepared to verify it one by one later. He prefers to believe what he has witnessed with his own eyes. Nuremberg, Austria. Nuremberg is located on a high mountain in Austria. It is a huge castle, or it is more appropriate to say a small city. When it was first established, Nuremberg was famous throughout the wizarding world. He is the base camp of the Saints. The Saints are the followers of the first generation of the Dark Lord, Grindelwald, in the wizarding world. At its peak, there were thousands of wizards living here, and it was extremely prosperous. But with Grindelwald admitting defeat and imprisoning himself, Ermengarde seemed to be like a domino, and in a very short time, it became depressed and lonely, with no one in the streets and alleys. In the entire Ermengarde, it seemed that only the self-imprisoned Jetler Grindelwald and some squibs with custody duties stayed in it. There was no wizard, as if they were afraid of Grindelwald's influence. Despite this, these squibs with custody duties were reduced to servants like delivering meals in Ermengarde. At this time, Grindelwald was in his study, sitting at the desk, motionless, as if thinking about something. He had white hair and a somewhat old face, but what was strange was that the pupil of his left eye was platinum, which matched his serious face and revealed a hint of majesty. In front of his desk, there was an open newspaper on the table. It was the Daily Prophet from the British wizard world. On the front of the newspaper, there was a picture of Lockhart's public lecture, and at the same time, the headline read, "Meditation, an epoch-making miracle, make wizards great again." After a moment, Grindelwald's platinum right eye pupil returned to normal black. At the same time, he was seen muttering to himself. Interesting, there is no trace of him in the future. Chapter 269, Killing the Dog Owner. Hogwarts, Snape's office. In the slightly dim office, Snape sat at the table, lowering his head and carefully observing a few drops of blood on a round plate on the table. Snape carefully dripped a drop of milky white liquid on the blood. Then, at a speed visible to the naked eye, the two quickly merged, and finally appeared bright red without any impurities. Seeing this, Snape showed a satisfied smile, and then looked up at Lockhart opposite him, and said in praise, "Lockhart, there is no problem with the blood, and the quality is better than I thought. Give me 3 more bottles of blood. I'm confident that I can give you the pure blood potion in half a month." After hearing Snape's accurate reply, Lockhart nodded lightly, waved his hand, and 2 bottles of blood floated in the air, and then slowly fell on the table. At the same time, with a hint of urgency in his tone, he said, "Okay, Snape, with these 2 bottles, there will be 3 bottles in total. I'm waiting for your potion." Snape looked at the blood in front of him, a hint of heat flashed in his eyes, and he nodded gently, indicating that there was no problem. This material, which is similar to a catalyst, will save a lot of refining time for potion masters like them. It is considered a very valuable material. After all, for potion masters like them, the time cost after conversion is not low. The only pity is that this time only killed 2 bottles of Lockhart, the dog owner. Well, in fact, 1 bottle of blood is enough, and he accepted the extra 2 bottles without hesitation, which can be regarded as the traditional art of the potion master. Thinking about it, Snape withdrew his sight from the blood, and then saw the rather urgent look of the dog owner in front of him. His only thought now is it's over, it's too little. I should have asked for more just now. Lockhart saw a trace of regret flashing in Snape's eyes, and an inexplicable feeling arose in his heart. This guy, is he killing himself? However, pure blood is important. After the blood is improved, it can play the greatest role in absorbing the power of the dimension. For some reason, he always has an extremely strong sense of urgency in absorbing the power of the dimension. It seems that after absorbing it, there will be a huge change. Forget it, I will be slaughtered, and the breakthrough is important. When you work for me in the future, I will let you know what 996, no, 007 is. Lockhart said viciously in his heart. Then, Lockhart reminded faintly, Snape, the materials are given to you. I hope to see my potion as soon as possible. Okay, no problem, Lockhart. Snape nodded without hesitation. Well, half a month is the longest period he roughly estimated, and it must be more than this in reality. By the way, Snape, I want another batch of potions. Lockhart took out a piece of parchment, handed it to the table, and said, it would be best if it could be done within a month. However, the quality of the potions required this time is not only high, but also the quantity is large, and the time requirement is also quite strict. If possible, do you know some potion masters who have a good relationship with me and want to ask them for help? After all, the number of potions needed this time is indeed quite large. Snape lowered his head and read the types and quantities of potions required on the parchment, and took a breath of cold air. What exactly is Lockhart going to do? There are not many potions on the parchment, but each one is top notch, and the number of potions required is not small. The worst one takes nearly a month to refine. The best one takes at least half a year. If you want to get it out within a month, you can only buy the collection that has been refined before. Are you sure you want these? Snape said with some doubt. I can help you contact the person, but the amount of gold galleons here is not small, at least tens of thousands of gold galleons. Are you sure you can pay? In response to Snape's doubt, Lockhart just smiled indifferently and said with pride, don't worry, I'm short of everything else, but I'm not short of gold galleons. Well, now the gold galleon printing factory has been opened, and it is making gold galleons for him all the time. Although there are still some minor problems left, they can be solved soon. It feels great for such a person to sit at home and have money flowing in like water. Okay, I'll contact this side. After hearing Lockhart's guarantee, Snape still doubted the other party's financial strength, but still reminded, it doesn't matter on my side, you can pay it later. But most of my friends require payment and delivery at the same time. They are not so easy to talk to. Well, dark wizards are indeed not easy to talk to. They will only give goods when they see the real thing. No problem. Lockhart nodded affirmatively. How many do you have? I want them all. I can give you as many galleons as you need right now. Hearing this, Snape's heart was shocked, and he looked at Lockhart with a flash of heat. Suddenly, he felt that the other party exuded the smell of gold galleons, and even his body was shining with gold. What a rich man. As long as he kills this one, he won't have to worry about the rest of his life. It's a pity that Lockhart is not weak, so it's not easy to do it. Snape flashed a trace of regret, but soon he was excited. This time, no matter what, make a profit first. As he said, he carefully recalled the potions he had stored on the parchment. This time, he was ready to take out most of them to trade with Lockhart. As for the rest, it depends on Lockhart's communication. Afterwards, Snape took out a lot of potions and communicated with Lockhart in detail, ready to make a good profit. Malfoy family, meeting room. At this moment, Lucius Malfoy's face was a little ugly. Dumbledore actually wanted Hogwarts to award Lockhart an honorary board member. This was completely beyond his imagination. Later, he heard that Lockhart, like their pureblood families, had to donate 300 gold galleons every year. This made it impossible for them to refuse, even if they wanted to. After all, they only donated this amount, and Lockhart just wanted an honorary status, not actual rights. They simply couldn't find a reasonable excuse to refuse, especially since Dumbledore was the headmaster of Hogwarts. With Dumbledore's identity, status, and influence, they had no way to refuse unreasonably. In the end, they could only pass the proposal with frustration. Now it seems that Lockhart has Dumbledore's protection in the school. Either let Dumbledore leave the position of headmaster, or take action in other aspects. It is almost impossible to put pressure on the school. While Lucius was thinking, he suddenly heard the voice of the house elf Dobby. Master, Ms. Rita Skeeter is here. Chapter 270 Letter from the Prophet. Hogwarts. Defense against the Dark Arts Office. Goo-goo. Goo-goo. Goo-goo stood on the bookshelf and called out to the owl Newbie not far away. Newbie tilted his head to look at Goo-goo. Then, he continued to eat the food provided by Lockhart. After seeing this, Goo-goo flapped his wings, and with a flash of blue light, he teleported to the side of Newbie. Goo-goo. Goo-goo. Goo-goo called out to Newbie who was eating food. After Newbie heard it, he tilted his head and looked at Goo-goo next to him, with a trace of confusion in his eyes. It seemed that it had seen this bird on the cabinet just now. Is it flying so fast? There is no movement yet. However, Goo-goo didn't pay attention to Newbie's reaction. He called out to remind the other party, and then lowered his head to taste the food on the owl's plate. It's not delicious. Goo-goo, who had just tasted the owl's food, was a little disappointed. He saw that the owl liked it very much just now, and thought it was delicious. The result was that the taste was average, and there was a bit of astringency, not as soft and sweet as the cake. Goo-goo. Goo-goo flapped his wings and teleported twice in a row, appearing in front of the table again, with a small cake on it, and then called to the owl, as if to say, look, this is a delicacy, try this. Goo-goo. Goo-goo. The owl newbie understood what Gugu meant, looked at the cake in front of him curiously, called out to express his gratitude, and then tasted it. Well, this tastes really good. After tasting it, the owl noob's eyes lit up, and he lowered his head, and began to eat it fiercely. Gugu. Gugu. When Gugu next to him saw it, he called out proudly, as if to say, eat slowly, there are plenty of good things here. Lockhart glanced at the interaction between Gugu and the owl, and a faint smile floated on his face. Then, he continued to lower his head and carefully read the letter sent by the owl. In the past few days, there are basically a large number of owls delivering letters every day, but most of them are related to meditation. In addition to the letters from wizards who wanted to discuss the principles of meditation with him, there were also some thank you letters from the parents and families of some of the 100 squibs he recruited. He selected these research assistants, and in addition to the requirements for spiritual talent, he also considered some family factors. Because this group of research assistants is different from Ian, Vera and others, this is the first batch of squibs who practice meditation publicly, and they will definitely attract a lot of attention from the wizarding world in the future. Especially the pureblood families will definitely target these people. After all, if there is a problem with this batch of squibs, as long as they are not caught, as long as they are guided in the later stage, the responsibility will be all on Lockhart. It is perfect for throwing dirty water and playing dirty tricks. Therefore, ordinary squibs can hardly withstand the targeting of pureblood families. Only those with a certain family background will make the pureblood families feel daunted and dare not act easily. Of course, on the other hand, Lockhart also wants to use the relationship of this group of research assistants to build a defensive wall for the promotion of his future magic system. He has selected many alchemy masters, potion masters, and squibs from pureblood families, and their influence is not weak. Later, he could make good use of the student relationship to build a good relationship with him and win him over to his camp. The reform of the magic system must be bloody. What he has to do is to learn from the great strategies of his previous life to make more friends and fewer enemies. However, the letter sent by the owl today is not simple. This is a letter written to him by a person who claims to be a prophet, and the content of the letter also discusses the principles of meditation. But what surprised him was that the other party made a lot of guesses about meditation in the letter. The various magic concepts mentioned in each guess hit the core of magic, and can even provide some help for Lockhart to study meditation. Lockhart had to sigh that the wizarding world is full of hidden dragons and crouching tigers. This prophet might be an old monster who has lived for many years. At this level, it is not an exaggeration to say that he is a top magic master. It seems that what Principal Dumbledore said is right. The current wizarding world should not be underestimated. Many powerful wizards are hiding behind the scenes. What made him even happier was that the prophet praised him many times and even agreed with his idea of making wizards great again. In this way, Lockhart wanted to win him over. It was rare to find someone like him, especially a wizard with a deep magical background. With his mind turning, Lockhart began to reply. He tried to invite the other party to discuss the principles of meditation in person, and at the same time test the other party's true identity and whether he really agreed with his ideas. Soon, Lockhart finished writing the reply and handed it to the owl nubby who was waiting beside him. Then, he watched the owl nubby flap its wings and reply to the prophet with the letter. Lockhart looked at Gugu on the side, waved his wand, cast a transformation spell, and a small treadmill appeared in front of Gugu again. There was one bad thing about returning to the Harry Potter world. That is, there was no Peter here. Without Peter's supervision, Gugu had already shown some signs of laziness. Hey, it seems that we also need to find a wizard to supervise Gugu's exercise. Who should we find? Harry, Hermione, or Hagrid? When Lockhart thought of Hagrid, he shook his head helplessly. Lockhart was really worried about the other parties doting on Gugu. He needed to find a stricter wizard, preferably as serious as Professor McGonagall, so that Gugu could keep exercising. Gugu, who had just walked onto the treadmill with his head down, suddenly felt a chill on his back for some reason, as if something bad had happened. Then he started running. In front of the keeper, he still had to run. After the keeper left, that was another matter. As for the feeling just now, why think so much? As long as there was food, it was fine. With the keeper here, even if the sky fell, he would support it. Lockhart looked at Gugu who was running, nodded slightly, and then continued to prepare the lesson plan. He also had to give his research assistant the first lesson, and help them to meditate for the first time. At the same time, the owl newbie, who was holding a letter, kept flapping his wings and flew away. Suddenly, a red light flashed, and the owl's body began to change, gradually turning into an eagle with wings, covered with strange red patterns. Cry. The eagle let out a long cry, grabbed the envelope with its claws, flapped its wings, and the red light flashed again. The space was distorted, and it was unknown how many miles it had crossed. Then, it flapped its wings again and teleported again. After going back and forth many times, it arrived at its destination, Nurmengard. At the same time, Grindelwald, who was sitting in the study reading a book, seemed to feel something. The next moment, a red light flashed, and the eagle appeared next to the desk, holding the envelope with its claws, and handed it to Grindelwald respectfully. As Grindelwald waved gently, the owl nubby, no, the eagle nubby flapped its wings, stood on the shelf beside, and silently looked around with sharp eyes, as if alert to the enemy that might appear at any time. Grindelwald opened the envelope in his hand, and looked at the letter written by Lockhart to himself, especially the content about wanting to meet, and the corners of his mouth curled up. Then, he began to write back. He was quite curious about this Lockhart. The established future is already in chaos, so the desperate future will also change. He can only feel at ease if he has control over the suspected source of all this. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 271, The Squib's First Meditation. Hogwarts. Classroom on the 4th floor. In a spacious classroom, a large number of futons are neatly placed throughout the classroom, with a number of about 100. At this moment, there is a squib sitting on each futon, sitting in different postures. Some sit cross-legged, some sit directly on the futon with their legs on the ground, and some stand up from time to time, as if they are not used to the futon. At the same time, the nearby squibs whispered to each other, and their tone was full of expectation. Professor Lockhart, the founder of the meditation method, will give them the first lesson, and teach them how to meditate. According to the public class, as long as the meditation is successful, they will have the ability to cast magic. They will also be able to completely get rid of the identity of a squib. Although most of them have a good family background, the identity of a squib has always been a heavy stone in their hearts. Especially when watching their friends and relatives around them cast magic at will, the envy in their hearts is self-evident. At the same time, their hearts will only become more depressed, hating themselves for being just a squib, hating themselves for living in the wizarding world, but not being able to master magic. But now it is different. As long as the meditation is successful, they will have the ability to cast spells. From then on, he could wave his wand in front of his family and get their praise. They were whispering. Suddenly, cough. A clear cough sounded in the ears of every squib, causing them to quickly raise their heads and look forward. At some point, Professor Lockhart, whom they had been waiting for, stood on the high platform in front. Good morning, everyone. Lockhart gently waved and greeted the squib research assistants below. Good morning, Professor. Good morning, Professor Lockhart. Good morning, Professor. Hearing Lockhart's gentle greeting, all the squibs responded with some excitement, and their voices were a little noisy. Seeing this, Lockhart gently pressed his hand down. After seeing this, the people below quieted down, but their expressions still showed obvious expectation and urgency. Future wizards, I don't need to introduce myself. After all, we have all met before. You came here to be my research assistants, but in fact, I treat you as my students. In the days to come, I will teach you how to meditate, and how to cast magic. Also, I have discussed with Principal Dumbledore that when you can cast your first magic, you can take classes with the young wizards of Hogwarts. Hearing this, all the squibs clapped excitedly, with excitement on their faces. They had been looking forward to entering Hogwarts a long time ago, studying with professors and classmates, and practicing magic together. But when they were 12 years old, there was still no burst of magic power, which marked that they had completely become squibs, and such thoughts could only be suppressed in their hearts. However, the inner desire became stronger with the passage of time. When the ideals of the past became reality, how could they not be excited? Seeing everyone's emotions, a faint smile appeared on his face. Looking at the podium in front of him, he stretched out his wand and lightly tapped it. Transformed quickly. Under a transfiguration spell, the podium shrank rapidly, constantly changing, and finally formed a cushion. Lockhart stood in front of the cushion and said to the squibs who were sitting in different postures below, "The cushion you made will be an important tool for your meditation in the future. In order to ensure the effect of meditation, you must follow my requirements for the initial meditation. First of all, the sitting posture is very important for you who are just starting to learn meditation. Bend your right knee, with the sole of your foot facing up, and place it under your left thigh." Then, Lockhart demonstrated the sitting cross-legged method of meditation to the squibs, and the squibs below followed suit. At the same time, Lockhart was worried that the squibs behind him could not see his movements clearly, so he also cast magic to project a pale yellow figure in front of each of them, showing them how to sit cross-legged. These 100 squibs, hearing Professor Lockhart talk about the importance of sitting posture, imitated each one more seriously, and learned the sitting cross-legged method of the figure in front of them. They were afraid that the meditation effect would be affected by the wrong sitting posture. And Lockhart, looking at the performance of the people below, nodded slightly. This sitting posture is not very useful for him, but it is extremely important for beginners. This is equivalent to a simple ritual, reminding them physically and mentally to correct their attitude and concentrate their spirit. When the apprentice mages of Kamar-Taj first came into contact with meditation, they had strict requirements in this regard. Then, Lockhart stood up and walked around the classroom, instructing some students whose postures were not in place. Soon, everyone's sitting posture became very standard. Seeing this, Lockhart waited for a while and felt that everyone had adapted. He waved his wand again, and in an instant, the pale yellow figure in front of everyone disappeared, replaced by 9 runes. At the same time, the voice of Professor Lockhart came to everyone's ears. After adjusting your sitting position, the next step is to meditate on the runes. In the entire meditation method, meditation on runes is very important. Each rune has different functions. The 9 runes in front of you are the 9-element meditation method mentioned in the public class before. This is the most basic meditation method. You have just come into contact with it. Practice it first. After you have achieved certain results, I will guide you to practice the meditation method that suits you. Now, you need to remember the first rune in the upper left corner in front of you, imprint it in your mind, and slowly outline each of its steps in your mind. In addition, you should also pay attention to breathing. Then, Lockhart began to explain some details of meditation. From the outline of the runes, to the problems that are easy to occur during meditation, including how to breathe, etc. All aspects were handed over to everyone one by one. At the same time, Lockhart also waved his wand and cast a large-scale memory amplification spell. Let them remember what he said in a short time. Almost all the squibs felt refreshed and very focused. Everything Lockhart said was remembered in their minds. It can be said that the more you learn, the happier you feel. Then, Lockhart waved his wand again and distributed the potion for meditation that he had prepared in advance to everyone. He guided them to meditate for the first time. Soon, in Lockhart's perception, there was an extremely weak fluctuation of magic power around a squib, indicating that the meditation was successful. One after another, these 100 squibs with good spiritual talents entered the state of meditation. Seeing everyone's meditation state, Lockhart did not make a sound to disturb them. He glanced at the window next to him and raised the corner of his mouth. Then he sat in the front, sat cross-legged, and began to meditate. At the same time, a small beetle landed on the window outside the classroom, taking in the scene just now. And this beetle was Veritaserum animagus. Chapter 272 Pure blood will be eternal pure blood. At night, Malfoy Manor. Above the restaurant, a huge crystal chandelier floated, and the bright light scattered around the restaurant through the crystal chandelier, making it look somewhat luxurious. On the slender dining table, there were all kinds of sumptuous food, including beef, seafood, etc. Lucius Malfoy, who was sitting at the main table, sat elegantly at the table, looking at the representatives of the pureblood families of the school board sitting on both sides of the table, as well as Rita Skeeter. Then everyone, let's have a drink with Miss Skeeter. Lucius Malfoy raised the glass beside him and said, Miss Skeeter not only brought us the information about moonlight meditation, but also obtained the practice method of meditation. I believe that in the near future, we will get more information about meditation. At that time, the glory of the pureblood family will return again. Cheers, Miss Skeeter. Cheers, the glory of the pureblood family. The representatives of the pureblood families sitting below also smiled, raised their glasses and said, Cheers, Miss Skeeter. Cheers, the glory of the pureblood family. Before, in order to obtain the meditation method, they tried their best to put pressure on Dumbledore and Hogwarts, and also use the power of the family to suppress Lockhart through public opinion. As a result, all failed. Unexpectedly, what they wanted was so easily obtained through a half-blood wizard. Moreover, it can be expected that, as long as the operation is proper, there will be opportunities to obtain more secrets about the meditation method in the future. At that time, Amir Lockhart, when he thought of this, a trace of eagerness flashed in his eyes towards Ms. Rita Skeeter in front of him. Although the other party is a half-blood wizard, the interests are paramount, and it is worth their efforts to win over. Come on, Miss Skeeter. Kane Parkinson on the side stood up and raised his glass to Rita Skeeter, saying, we will need more cooperation in the future. The Parkinson family will never let down any friend. After hearing what Kane said, Rita's face was full of smiles. She quickly raised her glass and said, it is my honor to cooperate with the Parkinson family. At the same time, other member families also toasted one after another, expressing their desire to win over Rita Skeeter. Just based on the other party's peculiar animagus, they deserve to look at her differently. And now, the other party is the core figure of the entire meditation method theft plan. Whoever does not win over is a fool. Face is not worth mentioning at all in the face of enough interests. Lucius, who was sitting on the main seat, looked at the pureblood families below who were trying to win over the people they brought with them. A hint of gloom flashed across his eyes, but it turned into calmness in an instant. A moment later, cough. Lucius Malfoy coughed lightly, and everyone's eyes were immediately fixed on him. Seeing this, Lucius slowly said, everyone, because of Ms. Rita Skeeter, we have achieved some results. But don't forget that Lockhart and Dumbledore have joined forces, and ordinary means will hardly work on them. At this point, Lucius paused, and his voice became a little gloomy. Don't forget, just the day before yesterday, Dumbledore strongly approved Lockhart's honorary membership of the board of directors at the board of directors meeting. Hearing what Lucius said, everyone was silent. They were all members of the board of directors, so they naturally knew what Dumbledore had done. They instinctively opposed this proposal, but there was no way, because the other party was the principal, and his reasons were very sufficient, and his attitude was even tougher. In the end, they could only pass this proposal. Lockhart has the status of an honorary member of the school board, and in many cases, it is difficult for them to put pressure on him through Hogwarts. Seeing everyone's expressions, Lucius also said, but I have thought of a very good plan. I wonder if you are interested in listening to it. Hearing what Lucius said, everyone nodded and said, Lucius, just say it. Yes, if it is appropriate, I will definitely support it. Seeing everyone's reaction, Lucius nodded slightly and said, under the current situation, with Dumbledore here, we can't take action against Lockhart through Hogwarts. But don't forget that Professor Lockhart has submitted a paper on meditation in a European magic journal. As Lucius continued to explain his plan, everyone looked at Lucius with different eyes. Good guy, worthy of being a Malfoy family, he is cruel and shameless. After hearing this, Rita Skeeter on the side flashed a strange look in her eyes. After a moment, what do you think of my method? Lucius asked everyone with a smile. If possible, we have to work together, and even pull in some families. Everyone was silent for a moment about Lucius's plan, as if they were considering the trade-offs and the benefits. This plan sounds good, but the cost of resources is also very high. If you are not careful, the backlash will be great. As if seeing everyone's hesitation, Lucius tempted and said, "Everyone, you can't catch a wolf without sacrificing a child. When we monopolize this meditation method in the future, the pureblood family will not only be able to return to the peak, and pure blood will be eternal pure blood." Lucius's tempting words added a heavy weight to the scales in their hearts. "Okay, Lucius, I support you," Kane Parkinson said beside him. Then, other pureblood families also responded. Seeing this, Lucius's face was full of smiles, and he seized this opportunity. The Malfoy family will usher in a new peak in his hands. After the atmosphere calmed down a bit, Lucius smiled at Rita Skeeter and said again, "Also, ensure the smooth progress of the plan. I think Ms. Rita Skeeter is very suitable for the position of Deputy Editor-in-Chief of the Daily Prophet. What do you think?" After a slight silence, everyone said, "Of course, Ms. Skeeter is very suitable for this position. Yes, with Ms. Skeeter's expertise, it is perfect." After hearing everyone's reaction, Rita's face flashed a hint of joy, and she hurriedly thanked, "Thank you, Lord Lucius. Thank you for your recognition. I will definitely not let you down." After hearing this, everyone looked at Rita Skeeter with approval. But I don't know what they think in their hearts. This is simply Lucius using their power to do a favor for Rita Skeeter. Rita Skeeter made such a great contribution before. Could they refuse? They all have shares in the Daily Prophet, and a Deputy Editor-in-Chief position is not the Editor-in-Chief, so they can still push it up. However, it is obvious that Rita Skeeter must do Lucius a favor. It is even possible that this was agreed upon in advance. Sorry, the timer was wrong. Chapter 273, Voldemort's Horcrux. Daily Prophet newspaper, Editor-in-Chief's office. Editor-in-Chief Cotton sat at his desk, quietly listening to his subordinate Berlin's constant complaints, or expressions of loyalty. "Editor-in-Chief, you have worked hard for 20 or 30 years to get to this position. As a result, Rita Skeeter, a reporter who only knows how to distort reports, became Deputy Editor-in-Chief because she relied on the pureblood family. Is this fair? Such a person can become a Deputy Editor-in-Chief. We editors and reporters are absolutely unconvinced. Editor-in-Chief, tell me, what should we do? As long as you say the word, no one in the entire newspaper will pay attention to this woman who sold her body." Cotton squinted his eyes and listened quietly to the complaints in Berlin's tone. With his rich experience, how could he not hear the envy hidden in Boland's complaining tone? Rita Skeeter, this stupid shallow reporter who only knows how to show off her writing skills, actually had the opportunity to rely on the pureblood family and got a position second only to his Deputy Editor-in-Chief. This was far beyond his expectations. Generally speaking, for such a person who was airdropped, Cotton has 100 ways to make her unable to stay in the Daily Prophet. However, this time, there are many pureblood families who pushed her up and even made him feel very difficult. If he took action directly, I'm afraid that there would be more trouble. Therefore, he had to pay more attention to this woman. I hope this woman will not show off her stupid schemes in the newspaper office. Otherwise, don't blame him for being cruel. Thinking about it, Cotton stretched out his hand to interrupt Boland's complaints and said, "Bolan, I know everyone's mentality. Don't worry, everything is under control. Go back and let everyone continue to work. I will call you when I need you. I will call you if there is something." Berlin, who had just been interrupted, heard what the Editor-in-Chief said, opened his mouth, hesitated a little, and then nodded and said, "Okay, Editor-in-Chief, I will go back first." Then, he turned and left. Cotton looked at Boland's leaving figure, tapped his desk lightly with his fingertips, and fell into deep thought. Why can Rita Skeeter get the support of so many pureblood families? There must be a reason. Only by finding the root cause can we drive this shallow woman out of our territory without any hidden dangers. The next day, in the meeting room of the Daily Prophet, Editor-in-Chief Cotton sat in the main seat, looking at the editors sitting on both sides of the long table, with solemn faces and no whispers. There was a hint of approval in his eyes, and then he set his eyes on the first empty chair on his left. A hint of ridicule and disdain flashed in his eyes, and he continued to wait silently. After a while, click, Click, click. With the sound of the door opening, a woman wearing jeweled glasses and wearing emerald green clothes walked in. It was Rita Skeeter. Rita looked around, looking at the people who were looking at her, and the only seat left was her deputy editor-in-chief. There was an inexplicable fire in her heart, and she didn't know that this was a show of power to her. However, when she thought of her master's order, Rita walked to her seat expressionlessly and sat down. When Cotton saw Rita's expression, he was a little surprised, because the other party's performance was a little beyond his expectations. However, without thinking too much, he clapped his hands and said, "Welcome our new colleague, Ms. Rita Skeeter." All the editors clapped their hands immediately. Rita Skeeter, who had just sat down, immediately stood up again, and was about to thank everyone. "Deputy Editor-in-Chief Rita, please sit down. I will read out your appointment first." Rita was interrupted by Editor-in-Chief Cotton. She felt a little aggrieved, and was ready to scold him. But when she thought of the task assigned by her master and the instructions of Ms. Carter in the magic imprint, she could only sit down expressionlessly. Seeing this, Cotton looked even more surprised. Could Rita be so patient? Why was it different from what he knew before? He was going to make Rita lose face the first time she entered the newspaper. Now it seems that he didn't underestimate this Rita Skeeter. Thinking about it, Cotton stood up, took out a piece of parchment, and read out, "After the board of directors of the Daily Prophet has decided to appoint Rita Skeeter as the deputy editor-in-chief of the Daily Prophet." After briefly reading out the appointment, Cotton applauded again and said, "Welcome Deputy Editor Rita to join the Daily Prophet." The editors below also applauded in time. But when Cotton stopped clapping, all the editors stopped clapping. Rita felt the power from Cotton again, and she wanted to beat up Editor-in-Chief Cotton. But she still smiled, and said politely to all the editors, "Thank you, everyone. I will need your support in the future." This time, Editor-in-Chief Cotton did not interrupt Rita Skeeter, but let her finish her words of thanks smoothly. The simple test just now found that Rita's personality was somewhat different from what he imagined, and there was almost no practical effect. So, he gave up such a small trick. After all, this kind of unorthodox method is okay to use occasionally for testing, but some upright means will have to be used later. Soon, when Rita Skeeter said almost everything, Editor Cotton clapped his hands softly, and Rita Skeeter took the opportunity to sit back in her seat. Deputy Editor Rita's speech makes a lot of sense. We should unite and work together to make the Daily Prophet stronger, Editor Cotton said. Immediately, he said to Rita in a tone that seemed to be negotiating, but in fact there was no doubt, "Deputy Editor Rita, you just came, so you should manage the photography department first. If you feel that your energy allows, you can also manage the logistics. What do you think?" Rita's face darkened after hearing Cotton's words. She had been a reporter at the Daily Prophet before, so how could she not know the tricks of each department? The photography department basically did not have much status, and the logistics department might as well be called a chores department. All chores were handled by the logistics department, which was not only complicated, but also meaningless. As for these two non-core departments, she instinctively wanted to refuse. As a deputy editor-in-chief, she did not ask to manage the entire Daily Prophet. At least she should be in charge of a core department. Otherwise, she, as a deputy editor-in-chief, would be just a figurehead, without any say. However, Peggy Carter, who observed this situation through the contract, seemed to be aware of Rita's thoughts and said quickly, "Rita, agree to it. These two parts will be very helpful for our future plans." Feeling the information conveyed by the golden dragon magic mark, Rita was silent for a moment, and nodded slightly to Editor-in-Chief Cotton. However, she still said, "Editor-in-Chief Cotton, it's okay for me to manage these two departments. However, I mentioned it at the board meeting before. The Daily Prophet will establish a new department under my charge, which will be responsible for interviewing major celebrities in the wizarding world. For example, our Hogwarts headmaster Dumbledore and the founder of the meditation method, Lockhart, etc. Editor-in-Chief Cotton, I want to recruit some editors and reporters to join our department. Do you think it's okay?" Hearing Rita's request, Editor-in-Chief Cotton had a headache. This department was created at the request of the pureblood family behind the Daily Prophet, and Rita was directly named to be in charge. He was not stupid. Combined with what happened some time ago, he knew with his feet that this was definitely aimed at the meditation method. It seems that the pureblood family still has not given up. He was very repulsive to such behavior, which was simply a joke with the future of the Daily Prophet. For a newspaper, fairness and objectivity are the most core element. Even if Rita Skeeter had distorted the report in the newspaper before, it only represented her personal opinion and had nothing to do with the Daily Prophet. In addition, in order to reduce potential risks, Cotton did not deliberately suppress reporters' positive reports on Lockhart and meditation. So during that period, there were praises and scolds, and there was a lot of noise. But there was almost no loss for the Daily Prophet, and even its reputation and interest increased a lot. But if Rita Skeeter was responsible for this column, he could imagine that with the other party's ability to distort the report. This column will definitely affect the future and reputation of the Daily Prophet. But there was no way the board of directors behind him passed this decision, and he had no way to obstruct it, and could only reduce its impact from the side. So he didn't even mention it at this meeting, and planned to suppress it slowly later. But now, Rita Skeeter said it directly, and he couldn't refuse it openly. After a moment of silence, Editor-in-Chief Cotton said coldly, "Okay, Ms. Rita Skeeter, you can recruit some voluntary editors to join the department you are in charge of later." After hearing this, Rita smiled faintly, and her master's words emerged in her mind. Rita, pureblood families influence all aspects of the wizarding world, among which public opinion is a crucial link. And the Daily Prophet can be said to be the mouthpiece of the pureblood families. You go there, and use the power of the pureblood families to control it. At the critical moment, it will play a huge role. Hogwarts, Defense Against the Dark Arts Office. Lockhart sat at the desk, reviewing the information just transmitted by the Golden Dragon magic mark, and his mouth curled up. He had seen the power of public opinion in his previous life. Black can be said to be white. If you really don't act in advance, it will be too late. With his mind turning, Lockhart focused his eyes on the black notebook on the desk. He closed his eyes slightly, and the ring on his right hand began to shine slightly. He concentrated his mind and energy, and his soul jumped up. Magic, soul projection. Instantly, Lockhart's soul escaped from his body, looked around the office, and then looked at the black notebook in front of him, Voldemort's Horcrux, and plunged into it. The scene changed, and in an instant, Lockhart entered a spacious space. Tom stood in the center of the space, with a large piece of text, runes and numbers appearing in front of him. As Tom's fingers lightly outlined, new text and runes were constantly added to it, enriching the content. "Professor Lockhart, you are here." Tom, who sensed the movement of the space, turned around and said to Lockhart, who was walking over, "Yeah." Lockhart nodded indifferently, and then looked at the text floating in the air. Tom, who was standing aside, saw it and hurriedly introduced, "Professor, this is the analysis of the crushing curse. Most of it has been analyzed so far, and I believe it will be able to be performed through Runeform in the near future." Lockhart nodded slightly, without replying, but his eyes were always fixed on the text in front of him, quickly scanning it and making deductions. After a moment, he opened his mouth and said, "Okay, Tom, keep working hard. I won't let anyone who has made efforts down, even if the other party is just a broken soul." Tom's heart skipped a beat after hearing this. A broken soul, he wouldn't find any traces outside, right? He didn't have time to think deeply, and then he heard Lockhart's voice again. "By the way, Tom, how is your soul meditation going?" Tom thought for a moment, and said in a delighted tone, "Professor, the meditation method is very effective. I can feel that my soul is slowly improving, and it is more stable. For the entire soul illusion space, the level of control has been enhanced, and deeper changes can be carried out." Hearing Tom's reply, Lockhart nodded slightly and said, "In that case, then take a good rest." The next moment, Lockhart seemed to think of something, and asked Tom meaningfully, "Tom, ask a question. I've been studying recently how to perfectly resurrect myself. You said, if after resurrection, there are a bunch of other memories in your mind, are you sure it is you who is resurrected? Make sure the will at that time is my current will." Hearing Professor Lockhart's question, Tom's heart jumped suddenly. He was almost certain that the other party knew the identity of his real Horcrux. Then, Lockhart continued, I think there is a good saying, I think therefore I am. It doesn't matter if you just have a few more memories, but you must make sure that your will and your way of thinking have not changed. If after resurrection, your mind is distorted and your thinking has changed, then is the so-called resurrection your resurrection or his resurrection? Do you agree with my idea? Lockhart's words seemed to awaken a deep thought in Tom's heart. After a long silence, he said in a hoarse voice, Professor, I need to think about this question carefully. Seeing Tom's reaction, Lockhart raised his mouth and said as if hinting, yes, this question is very interesting. You should really think about it more. Otherwise, everything you do will become someone else's wedding dress, which is not good. Remember to tell me when you think of the answer. In response, Tom nodded silently, his expression a little gloomy. Seeing this, Lockhart smiled faintly on his face and then turned and left. Tom watched Lockhart's leaving figure, his eyes revealing his thoughts. At the same time, a voice came from afar. By the way, Tom, I remember you were in this notebook 50 years ago. You may not know the changes that have taken place in the wizarding world in the past 50 years. I brought a book with all the big and small things in these years. You can read it when you have nothing to do. P.S. Dear readers, the average subscription has been dropping by 20 to 30 per day recently, and it has dropped by almost 200 to 300. My mentality has collapsed a little, and I dare not look at the data. I ask the big guys to support genuine subscriptions. If the big guys who are still supporting books can support it after seeing it, it would be great. The humble author is asking for support online. Currently try the 2-in-1 chapter first to see if I can save the crazy decline in the average subscription. I just found out that this chapter was swallowed by the system. It hasn't come out for several hours, and there is no reminder of any violation. This luck suddenly feels that I urgently need the support of the big readers. Chapter 274 Draco, Harry Potter, We. Defense against the Dark Arts Office. Lockhart leaned on a chair, with a half-opened black notebook in front of his desk. The entire office was silent except for the faint chirping of cicadas outside the window. Suddenly, the surface of the black notebook flickered, and a transparent figure walked out of it, and then disappeared into the body on the chair. Soon, Lockhart opened his eyes, looked at the notebook in front of him, and the corners of his mouth curled up. Tom's talent, especially his talent for dark magic, is one of the best among all the wizards he has ever seen. Otherwise, Voldemort would not have become the second-generation Dark Lord. But talent is talent after all, and cashing in is the right way. Now Tom, except for research, can't play much use in other places. More importantly, Tom now has signs of slacking off, or even slacking off. Many studies, but in his opinion, could have been completed ahead of time, but the time to hand in the results was delayed. And he usually behaves very seriously. To be precise, every time he went over to look, he behaved very hard, just like just now. This made Lockhart want to find an excuse to teach him a lesson, but he didn't find one. Unwarranted teaching will only dampen his enthusiasm. Therefore, another method must be used to stimulate him. Resurrection is the most suitable in his opinion. Moreover, after resurrection, with a little training, he will be a top combat force again, which is equivalent to adding another transformation, helping him with research in normal times, and helping him fight when something goes wrong. Simply, perfect. As for betrayal, tut tut tut, does he think his golden dragon magic brand is just there for nothing? Of course, he can't resurrect Voldemort directly, but resurrecting Tom, who is still in school, is still possible. The other part, his memory and cognition, are all in the period of Hogwarts school. Although his mentality is a bit cruel, he is very rational and knows what to do and what not to do. He is not like the future Voldemort, who made himself a little crazy because of the crazy splitting of souls and making Horcruxes. Lockhart didn't believe that Tom didn't want to resurrect his current self, but wanted to resurrect a twisted self. He was very much looking forward to seeing the scene of the two Toms meeting in the future. Thinking about it, Lockhart put away the Horcrux notebook and took out a specially made modern event record and put it in the box. Well, there is a lot of content about Voldemort. Hogwarts, 2nd grade defense against the dark arts classroom. Today is their first defense against the dark arts class of the week. This makes the little wizards of Gryffindor and Slytherin very excited. Every time they have Professor Lockhart's class, there are more or less some small surprises. Of course, there are good and bad. When it's good, they get some rewards, such as some snacks. And when it's bad, they get a test paper. But in the last class, Professor Lockhart mentioned that this class will be a practical course. Not only do they not have to read books, but there will also be very interesting activities. This makes them look forward to it. At this moment, Harry Potter said to his two friends with great expectation, "What activities will Professor Lockhart start this time? Will he let us have a one-on-one actual combat?" Hermione on the side also guessed with some expectation, "Maybe. But I hope that Professor Lockhart is our new battle spell." And Ron said, "Actually, I feel that, as long as I don't read books, everything will be fine." Well, what is the nature of a poor student? It is clearly demonstrated. Hermione rolled her eyes at Ron and said speechlessly, "Ron, you should think about the homework assigned by Professor Snape. Don't wait until then, you will clean up slugs for Professor Snape." Ron was a little dejected when he heard it. The last time he made a mistake in brewing potion, not only did Snape deduct points, but also disgusting slugs came out. The scene at that time was simply a nightmare. "Hermione, please lend me the homework this time," Ron begged pitifully. And Harry on the side, his eyes lit up. Although he could finish his potions homework, it would be great if someone could give him some advice. At this moment, suddenly, one flying, a familiar but annoying voice came. Instantly, Ron's wand on the table flew to the side. Ron, who had just acted, immediately turned his head and looked at the location of Slytherin College not far away. His face became very ugly. He saw that Draco Malfoy, whom he hated the most, was holding his wand in his hand, waving it constantly, and passing it to his two followers. "Draco, give it back to me." Seeing this scene, Ron immediately ran towards Malfoy, and shouted at the same time. Harry and Hermione looked at each other, and hurriedly followed behind. "Look, this is the wand that Professor Lockhart gave to Ron, because he felt sorry for him." Draco waved Ron's wand and mocked. "Look at the Weasley family, they are simply the shame of the pureblood family. They are so poor that they can't even afford a wand. Others gave it to him because they felt sorry for him." Ron heard this and became furious. "Draco, you bastard, you deserve to be defeated by Harry last time." Ron cursed while swinging his fist and hitting Draco. When Draco heard what Ron said, his face immediately darkened. He felt extremely humiliated when he lost the duel to Harry Potter last time. He was annoyed when it was mentioned again this time. Lock the tongue and throat. Draco, who was a little angry, waved the wand in his hand and cast a small evil spell directly at Ron. Faint. At the same time, Harry behind him saw Draco's action and quickly cast a stun spell and shot at the evil spell. In an instant, the two spells emitting red light collided with each other and then cancelled out. Ron's face turned pale when he saw this, but he immediately cursed. "Malfoy, who only knows how to sneak attack, is despicable, vulgar, and shameless. Give me back my wand if you dare. Let's duel." Draco's face looked a little ugly after hearing Ron's curse, but he sneered. "Ron, you can even hit yourself when you cast a stunning spell. People like you are simply the shame of pure blood, and you are not worthy of dueling with me." Hearing this, Ron was furious, but there was no wand in his hand. Instead, he clenched his fist and waved it at Draco again. At the same time, Harry saw Draco holding Ron's wand. He waved his own wand directly and said in a hurried tone, "Wand flying." In an instant, a flying curse flew towards Ron's wand. As soon as Draco reacted, he found that Ron's wand in his hand had already flown towards Harry Potter on the opposite side. Ron, who saw this scene, was delighted and turned to Harry to thank him. "Harry, thank you." After that, he took his wand back from Harry, turned around again, and waved it at Draco. "Coward, let's have a duel between men." After hearing what Ron said, Draco laughed disdainfully. "I've already said that I won't duel with a shame like you. If you want a duel, Harry Potter, it's your turn." Well, the actions just now were all for the purpose of dueling with Harry. The last time he failed in public, he felt ashamed. After returning, he studied some new magic seriously and came to Harry to avenge his previous shame. At this moment, suddenly, Professor Lockhart is here. Professor Lockhart is here. Draco and his group suddenly heard a little wizard shouting excitedly from the door. His face changed slightly, and he snorted coldly. He said to Harry again, "Harry, if you are still a man, at 12 o'clock tonight, you will be the teacher of the duel club last time, and let's have another duel." After that, he returned to his seat with his followers. Professor Lockhart was a professor he liked very much, and he didn't want to leave a bad impression. After hearing this, Harry, Ron, and the other two quickly returned to their seats. They knew that, no matter which professor it was, they would definitely not have a good face for the scene just now. Well, except Snape. Soon, Harry and the other two returned to their seats, and the other little wizards also sat down and talked, and then discussed in a low voice, as if they were guessing, what the surprise mentioned by Professor Lockhart was. "Harry, are you really going to the classroom tonight?" Ron said worriedly. "Don't forget last time, he said he wanted to duel with you, but he didn't show up. If we weren't lucky, we might have been caught by Filch." Hermione on the side also said, "Yes, Harry, and if we are caught wandering at night again, our Gryffindor will lose points again. Our house has lost a lot of points recently." Well, Ron's two mischievous brothers are simply the kings of deducting points. She even suspects that the other party is undercover sent by Slytherin College. After hearing this, Harry thought for a moment, looked at the silver bracelet on his right arm, and said confidently, "Don't worry, I have an invisibility cloak, and I will definitely not be discovered this time. Besides, if we really don't go, I'm afraid Draco and the others will use this to mock us again. Besides, I have mastered several magics recently, and I believe I can definitely surprise Draco." Hearing what Harry said, Ron nodded and said directly, "Okay, then I'll go with you tonight." And Hermione hesitated for a moment and said, "Then I'll go with you just in case. Even if we are discovered, we can take care of each other." Soon all the little wizards stopped communicating and looked forward with expectant eyes. Because Professor Lockhart entered the classroom with a suitcase and stood on the podium. At this moment, Lockhart didn't know what had just happened. Looking at the expectant eyes of the little wizards, a faint smile floated on his face. "I told you last time that today's defense against the dark arts course will be very interesting. Come on, everyone can stand up and stand in the aisle." Lockhart put the suitcase on the podium and said to everyone with a smile. After hearing this, the young wizards showed excitement on their faces and quickly stood up and moved to the aisle. Dung. Cap. Dung. Cap. With the sound of a large number of tables, chairs, and benches moving, the young wizards lined up in 3 rows. When everything was quiet, Lockhart looked at everyone and nodded slightly. Then, waving his wand, a transparent ripple enveloped the entire classroom. At the same time, all the tables, chairs, and benches began to float upwards and then moved to the back corner. After a while, a very spacious space was left in the middle of the entire classroom. Seeing this, Lockhart walked down and called to the young wizards, "Come on, everyone line up and stand in front of me." As soon as Lockhart finished speaking, the young wizards gathered together excitedly and then pulled their friends to line up together. "Gregory, come here, let's stand here." Draco called to his follower. "Hermione, Harry, here, here." Ron waved to Hermione and said, "I wonder what fun things Professor Lockhart has brought out this time." Ron was very excited about the fact that their team won the first place after the last battle with the elves. "Hello eyes, let's move forward." The little wizard Parvati of Gryffindor pulled her friend to the front. Soon, a long line formed in front of Lockhart. Looking at Hello Eyes standing in the front and the little wizards whispering behind him, Lockhart smiled. Ahem. Lockhart coughed lightly, and immediately the little wizards quieted down and lined up neatly in a long line. Seeing this, Lockhart waved his wand, and the suitcase on the ground opened automatically. Then, from the opened suitcase, a closed box slowly floated out. Then it landed steadily next to Lockhart. Seeing everyone's curious eyes, Lockhart smiled gently and said, "Today, let everyone see a strange and magical animal, Boggart." As he spoke, Lockhart stretched out his wand and waved it gently, and the words of Boggart appeared in the air. Boggart, a 2x level magical creature, has the ability to transform and generally lives in dark and narrow places. Just like the box you see in front of you. Lockhart pointed to the box next to him and continued, and his magic is, it can see through your heart, just like the round worm in your stomach. The more you fear something, the more it will become and scare you. For example, if you are afraid of a werewolf, it will become a werewolf, and if you are afraid of a vampire, it will become a vampire. After Lockhart finished speaking, the little wizards on the opposite side exclaimed in a low voice, as if they were amazed at Boggart's talent for seeing through people's hearts. Of course, he is just threatening. After all, he is just a 2x magical creature with almost no attack power. And you only need to master a spell. At this point, Lockhart paused, raised his wand, and slowly waved it, while saying to the little wizards, come, follow me. Funny. Seeing Professor Lockhart's actions, all the little wizards also chanted the spell together. Funny. Funny. Because this spell is relatively simple, soon all the little wizards basically mastered it. Seeing this, Lockhart said to everyone, next, let's start the journey of the mind. Face what you fear most, and then, defeat it. Chapter 275 Quirrell and Voldemort returns. Since you have just mastered the funny spell, the next rules are very simple. I only have one basic requirement, and that is to be able to face the thing you fear for at least 5 seconds. The longer you can hold on, the easier it is to get a reward. The first ranked boy will get an exquisite magic bracelet, and the girl will get a magic necklace. The ones who rank higher can get magic amulets, potions, including some of my original spells and other rewards. If you are really scared in the middle, use the spell you just practiced on the Boggart. Funny. However, when you run away, or cast a spell, it will be considered a failure. Now, do you have any questions? After Lockhart finished speaking, the little wizards looked at each other. Eloise Midgen, who was standing in the front, slowly raised her hand, and asked in a low voice, Professor, is this Boggart really not dangerous? Seeing the timid expression of the little girl in front of him, Lockhart smiled and comforted her. There will be no problem, you can rest assured about this. I'm your professor, and I will definitely be responsible for your safety. This Boggart is purely scary, and has almost no attack power, unless you scare yourself. Then, he encouraged everyone. Today's class is mainly to train everyone's courage. As a wizard, courage is very important when standing. Only when we muster up the courage can we gather our will, otherwise when facing the enemy, we may not even be able to cast spells. Courage, this is what I, as a professor of defense against the dark arts, think is the most basic quality of a wizard. At this point, Lockhart reminded meaningfully, the wizarding world in the future may usher in a rare prosperous era, with endless opportunities, but there will be no shortage of dangers. Among them, only those with courage have the opportunity to become powerful. Hearing what Lockhart said, the little wizards were a little confused. But Lockhart didn't care, and continued to ask, does anyone have any questions? Hearing this, Draco Malfoy raised his hand and asked loudly, Professor, I want to ask about the magic bracelet ranked first. Is it like the one on Harry Potter's hand? Since Harry Potter obtained the magic bracelet, his learning efficiency has been significantly improved. Later, after Ron, the big mouth, showed off to his classmates around him, the effect of the magic bracelet spread among the 4 colleges. Many young wizards were very envious and even jealous. Draco was like this. Yes, Draco, this magic bracelet was just made by me. The effect is the same as Harry's, which is very helpful for learning. In addition, a new automatic defense function has been added, which is considered a good alchemical item. The magic necklace is the same as the magic bracelet. This is a prize that can only be obtained by the person who ranks first. It is also the reward that the bravest deserves. Lockhart answered with a smile, and the tone behind was full of temptation. Lockhart's words the bravest immediately made Draco a little excited and imaginative. The young wizards also discussed it. The atmosphere, which was originally somewhat quiet, suddenly became heated. I'm the most courageous. My parents all praise me for my courage. Maybe I can get the first place this time. A little wizard said to his friends around him with some pride. Hermione, what are you most afraid of? Ron asked beside him. Hermione did not answer, but asked directly, Ron. Harry, what are you most afraid of? Eloise, you are the first. You must do your best. Parvati, who pushed Eloise to the first place, comforted her from behind. Parvati, why don't you be in front of me? Eloise whispered. No, I'm behind you, and I'll be the next one, Parvati said spinelessly. Seeing the atmosphere suddenly become heated, Lockhart nodded with satisfaction. Little wizard, you still need to be excited. Cough. Then, seeing that everyone had almost finished discussing, he coughed lightly, and soon, the little wizards quieted down. Seeing this, Lockhart said, okay, let's start the first trial of the brave. Eloise, are you ready? Lockhart gently encouraged the first little girl. Take up your courage, face your fear, and believe that you are the best. Okay, Professor, I'm ready. Eloise nodded and said, looking at the brown wooden cabinet in front of her, clenched her small fist, and a trace of nervousness flashed in her eyes. Seeing this, Lockhart nodded slightly, waved gently, and the brown wooden cabinet slowly opened. At the same time, the grey mist-like, constantly changing boggart inside seemed to sense something, and its body began to slowly solidify and expand. In Eloise's eyes, in the slowly opening box. Suddenly, roar. A werewolf with a huge body, grey hair all over his body, fangs in his mouth, and a ferocious face roared at Eloise. Ah, werewolf, some little wizards shouted in panic and retreated. Eloise in front of him had a flash of panic in her eyes, but she kept whispering to herself, I'm not afraid, I'm not afraid, it's all fake, it's all fake. However, her slightly trembling body, the slight clanging sound of her clenched teeth, and the tightly clenched wand in her hand all showed Eloise's inattention. Roar. Boggart turned into a grey-haired werewolf and roared again, opening his bloody mouth, and waving his grey claws, slowly moving towards Eloise. This made Eloise subconsciously take a step back, but then, as if she remembered what Professor Lockhart said, looking at the slowly moving werewolf in front of her, she began to count silently in her heart. 5, 4, 32, 1. Before she finished counting in her heart, she found that the werewolf was still some distance away from her. For some reason, the fear in her heart faded a little. Then, as if she had thought of something, she began to move to the side, as if to increase the distance and delay time. Lockhart looked at Eloise's performance and nodded slightly. This little girl is really good. Although she looks a little nervous on the surface, she is still strong when facing the things she fears. In the first stage, she faced the fear directly and performed well. At the same time, looking at Eloise who was pulling away, Lockhart's right hand ring flashed with a faint light, and he slightly relaxed the control of the boggart. Start the second stage, coexist with fear. Roar. Looking at Eloise who was staring at him closely but slowly retreating, the werewolf incarnated by the boggart seemed to sense something, and began to increase its speed. With a roar, it waved its grey claws at Eloise. Seeing the werewolf increasing its speed, Eloise flashed a little panic, but her little mouth kept muttering silently, they are all fake, they won't hurt anyone, they won't hurt anyone. At the same time, she stared at the werewolf rushing over, muttering while dodging quickly to the side. Roar. The first time, Eloise successfully dodged, because the werewolf was slow. With the second and third successful dodges, the werewolf's speed became faster and faster. Indistinctly, one could hear the sound of its claws cutting through the air. The little wizard was sweating as he watched from the side. On the fourth attempt, it almost pounced on Eloise's back. The little girl was immediately panicked. She subconsciously waved her wand and cast her most handy spell on the werewolf. Dizzy. In an instant, a red light shot towards the werewolf. Bang. But in an instant, a pale yellow light curtain quietly emerged to resist the attack of the coma spell. At the same time, the werewolf took a big step back. At the same time, Lockhart's voice also came quietly. Remember to cast the funny spell. Imagine the funniest look in your mind. The spell is funny. Hearing Lockhart's reminder, and seeing the werewolf rushing over again, Eloise waved her wand. Funny. In an instant, a pale yellow spell shot from the tip of the wand towards the werewolf. This time, the werewolf was successfully hit. At the same time, the ferocious werewolf turned into a cute werewolf doll. Wow. The little wizards on the side exclaimed in surprise. They were all worried about Eloise, but they didn't expect that this very ferocious looking werewolf would turn into a cute doll. Clap, clap, clap. When the little wizards were surprised, applause rang out. Then, all the little wizards applauded, and the whole classroom was filled with fierce applause, as if praising Eloise's courage. At this moment, Lockhart looked at the little girl Eloise with approval. When the applause was a little smaller, he said loudly, "Eloise, in this trial of courage, you have persisted for 1 minute and 35 seconds. Let us applaud the brave Eloise again." As he said, Lockhart clapped gently, and the applause, that had been a little bit warm, became warm again. Eloise, who was a little disappointed with her performance, began to raise her head confidently and smiled brightly at everyone. Then, watching Professor Lockhart wave his hand, letting the boggart return to the brown wooden box again, he also walked back to the side of the little wizard team and stood beside them, looking forward to watching his good friend Parvati's performance. Seeing this, Lockhart gently said to Parvati, who was ranked second, "Come on, let's start the second brave trial." After hearing this, Parvati stared at the box opposite her, and her expression was a little nervous. She didn't know what would come out of the box. Seeing this, Lockhart opened the wooden box slowly again in his mind. This time, it appeared his S's. A huge python swam out of the box, spitting out snake spirits continuously, and stared at the little girl Parvati opposite her. Hearing the hissing sound in his ears, and seeing the ferocious big python, the little wizards behind him subconsciously leaned back, as if gathering together made them feel safer. At this time, Parvati suddenly found that she couldn't do it like her good friend Eloise. "I just felt weak all over, especially when I saw the python slowly swimming towards me and opening its bloody mouth towards me. The fear in my heart suddenly emerged. My legs and feet were a little weak, and I couldn't run, even if I wanted to." Seeing this scene, Lockhart sighed in his heart, but it was not surprising. Most people are ordinary people, and there are very few who are born with courage beyond ordinary people. Many courageous people are trained after birth. What's more, this is a little girl who is just 12 years old. Then, the mind turned, controlling the giant python transformed by Boggart to stop moving, and reminded Parvati, "Come and cast the funny spell." Hearing Professor Lockhart's voice, Parvati, who was weak all over, seemed to be injected with strength. Looking at the giant python opposite that was not moving, but still spitting out its snake tongue at her, she waved her wand vigorously, and said in a very fast tone, "Funny funny." A light yellow magic spell shot at the giant python, and in an instant, the giant python began to shrink, lying on the ground, and its body shape changed. Soon a cute puppy kept sticking out its tongue at Parvati and barking cutely. The change made the little wizards behind them flash with surprise. This boggart is really amazing. It was so big just now, but it suddenly became so small and cute. However, Parvati in front of him was a little disappointed, because she found that her performance was obviously not as good as her good friend Eloise. Lockhart saw it and encouraged. Our second little hero Parvati faced her fear and successfully cast the funny spell. Let's applaud her. Hearing this, the little wizards behind applauded, but the intensity was obviously smaller. The disappointed Parvati looked a little more excited, and then stood aside, revealing the third little wizard. Seeing this, Lockhart began to greet the third little wizard McCock for the next round of trials. Maybe this little wizard has a strict family education. McCock's deepest fear is actually his father's severe scolding. Boggart transformed into McCock's father and directly began to list McCock's faults. McCock was a little panicked and at a loss. Finally, after being reminded by Lockhart, he waved his wand and cast a funny spell. He turned the strict father incarnated by the boggart into his gentle mother. Lockhart insisted, comforted softly, and then continued to greet the next one. In this way, one after another, the little wizards began to face the boggart and the deepest fear in their hearts. Some little wizards performed better, passed the first stage of facing fear, and began to coexist with their inner fears like Eloise. However, facing the fear that was getting closer and closer, they couldn't help but cast the spell in the end. Most of the little wizards could only complete the first stage under the guidance of Lockhart, and then rested on the side. Soon, nearly half of the little wizards completed the training. Then it was the turn of the three little Gryffindors, or more precisely, Harry Potter, who was in front. "Harry, it's your turn now. Just like before, you have to face your fear. If you are really scared, cast the funny charm." Professor Lockhart's reminder came to his ears. Harry nodded heavily, and then looked at the closed brown wooden cabinet nervously. As Lockhart waved his hand gently, the cabinet door opened again. Then a man wearing a black wizard robe and a purple scarf wrapped around his head, faintly exuding the smell of garlic. It was Quirinus Quirrell, the professor of the Defense Against the Dark Arts class at Hogwarts last year. When Harry saw Professor Quirrell in front of him, a trace of horror flashed in his eyes. The other little wizards, and Quirrell, who was transformed into a boggart, looked at Harry opposite, and showed a cold smile. Then he turned around and slowly took off the light purple scarf wrapped around his head. A strange face that kept changing, and a little hideous was revealed at the back of his head. At the same time, a hoarse voice came. Harry, I didn't expect that I would be alive again. This time, you will die in my hands just like your parents. Thanks to bookfriends 202001291446407002, bookfriends 2022050610142539, and bookfriends 2018011922092427 for their monthly votes. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.